Welcome back to the Hearthstone Global Games. We have one series left to go today, and it's a big one. Singapore versus the United States.
Yeah, we're going to be finding out the other match in, I believe this is Group C of the dual knockout phase, and we're going to be finding out who is going to be going up against New Zealand in the winners bracket, or up against Chinese Taipei in the lower bracket. Because once again, 2 wins and you're through, 2 losses and you are out, as we do get to take a look at this bracket.
There you go. For the winner of this match, it is just going to be New Zealand standing between them and BlizzCon. I also want to make a very quick PSA. The global cheer bits, points, whatever you want to say, has almost reached 8 million, which means we're about, I think, 100,000 or 200,000 away from everyone getting 2 card packs.
Brilliant. I think you have to give 700 bits to actually qualify
everyone
for
that's
that.
given 700 bits.
Yes,
exactly.
And not everyone in the world would get 2 packs, as lovely as that would be. And, you know, United States are very much at the front of that, by far the #1. In terms of points, as much as it pays all of Europe, I'm sure.
Well, it's time to see if their gameplay can back it up. Let's take a look at the teams that will be representing Singapore: Sequinox, Katsukari, Caius, and Crumpled versus United States. I know that they're one of your personal favorites, Derek. Just saying, Muzzy, Terrence, and Frozen.
Yep, they are just undeniably very good at Hearthstone. I think it's fair to say this has been the week of Just Saying so far, or I suppose it's 2 weeks now since he qualified. Since he won his DreamHack, then qualified through to the full championship. So make sure you are looking out for this guy if you haven't been keeping up with Hearthstone recently.
How are we breaking this down then? We've got the year of Killing All Day.
Yeah.
The season of Hunter Race.
Yeah.
And the week of Just Saying.
That's right.
Can we have, like...
It's not that complicated.
A day for someone? Does someone get a day?
Yeah. Well, you can have, like, a second if you want. And it starts now.
Yes, I am... Yeah.
It's done.
Okay.
That's it. You missed it.
I didn't. I enjoyed it while it lasted.
Good. I'm glad you had fun.
Let's take a look at the picks and bans for these 2 great teams. All right, so starting off with the typical, is it Quest Rogue? It's Quest.
It is
typical
Quest Rogue.
Ban.
Yep, 2 very slow groups of decks here. We even have some lineups that are reserved for only aggro strategies, like Paladin for the United States. They've gone even Paladin instead of odd Paladin, which is still kind of aggressive. I believe Muzzy's been playing a little bit of that on stream when I've been tuning in to his channel. But outside of that, it's the likes of Shadowwalk Shaman, even Warlock, Quest Rogue, Aggro Mage is one of the few out-and-out aggressive decks on both sides here.
The even Paladin is very similar to, or possibly even card for card, the same as the list that Hypno brought from Team Switzerland before. That's very interesting to see that that's sort of caught on and making the waves. You know, if USA players are playing it on stream, then it's only going to blow up from here.
Yeah, Muzzy likes these slightly weird Paladin decks I'm seeing from the even Paladin, the Mech Paladin. I even saw him trying a while ago odd mech Paladin with Kangor's Endless Army. It wasn't a good deck, but it was fun to watch, at least.
Well, I mean, Netherlands showed us the OTK Paladin in the last series. It was the only win that they did get, as I shed a single tear from my team. But let's take a look at how these decks have fallen into place. It's matchup screen time. We're starting off the game with Caius versus Just Saying. It's Death Battle Hunter versus Token Druid.
Yeah, and overall here, I feel like we've got a pretty even series here, much more so than Norway's massive upset against Ukraine earlier on in the day, or New Zealand's very favourable way it worked out against Chinese Taipei. We've got Death Rattle Hunter up against the Token Druid, which is usually going to be more Hunter favoured, I would say, against most Druid decks. Token Druid is a little bit different, though. It can get forward to its win condition an awful lot quicker than most other Druid decks.
Yeah, it's very quick to the punch, isn't it? And again, one of the things we like to talk about this with Death Battle Hunter, it's the fact that these eggs do equal an extra spreading plague for the opponent. So every egg that's on the board is an extra 1/5. These 1/5s can very quickly become lethal when paired with branching paths and Savage Roars in Token Druid.
It's just basic maths. Eggs equal scarabs. You learn that like day 1 of school. Read a book.
I didn't learn that. Wow.
Busy playing Hearthstone, weren't you, Fount?
I'm feeling very insecure about my general knowledge right now.
That's the Derek special. Just
making you feel insecure?
A big dollop of insecurity, yeah.
Great. Well, eggs equal scarabs. There may be an egg that hatches a scarab one day in Hearthstone.
There also may not.
Just saying, I wouldn't put it past the team.
Fair enough.
Especially if Lorinda gets involved. I know how much of an avid card designer he is. But anyways, as you were saying, we've got a very close series coming up. Derek, which team is going to take it?
I hate to be biased against Singapore, who is a team that I have a lot of respect for. They've performed over what I think most people were expecting for them, but even then, as we saw on the top half there of the players in that team, Katsukari and Sequinox are both very well-known and respected players. I'm really not trying to take anything away from them. But USA, maybe there's a couple of teams that can stand up to them in terms of raw star power and competitive pedigree, but they kind of have to just be number one, I think, in terms of how good all the players on their team are. They all have very good tournament experience, ladder experience. They're part of these strong practice groups as well. They just tick all the boxes for a very impressive team.
Well, we're starting off with the man himself. It is Just Saying up against Kaius. This is the month of Just Saying.
Hopefully
week of Just Saying, even.
Yeah, well, I'm just saying that because he did it all in like a week. It was one weekend he won DreamHack, and then the next he just went on to qualify for full champion.
Maybe it's like a week and a half, Just Saying. We'll see how he does today.
Whatever you like, mate. As a respectable starting hand is found for Just Saying on the token Druid. Wild Growth, obviously, to get things rolling, is always going to be a pretty decent hand. It can only be so bad. If he can just find himself Nourish or some way to go wide on the board with maybe a Whispering Woods, he should be in a pretty good spot.
So I have to be honest, Eric, and I'm not entirely certain on what the standard deck list for Token Druid is nowadays. I mean the standard new Token Druid Strong Shell list, because what Cyan is doing is he's running 2 copies of Power of the Wild and only 1 Strong Shell and 1 Giggling Inventor.
Yeah.
2 Saranites. And it seems to be like those cards that I just listed, the different players kind of choose 1 or 2 others of each and stick it in the deck. I'm not really sure what the maths behind that is.
There's a lot of flex spots. We've seen some people cutting 2 Power of the Wilds in favor of another Giggling, another Strong Shell. We've seen Ike at playoffs cutting both Spellstones, I believe, from his deck in favor of Tar Creepers, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Which, you know, makes sense. There were a lot of decks over the weekend that had these Tar Creepers in that were doing really well. Purple, I believe, who got number 5, or I suppose 5th through 8th, had Tar Creepers in pretty much all his decks. If I'm not mistaken, Just Saying also had a few Tar Creepers in like his Odd Rogue in particular. I could be mistaken on that, but basically it's making a little bit of a comeback, and there are a lot of flex spots in this Token Druid. So I would be interested in taking note throughout the series, the course of this game, as to how those tech choices influence the matchup.
But now, for this game, the question for this turn is how aggressively can Just Saying play his cards here? Because coining out Giggling Inventor is certainly an option. He can play that. He's got Power of the Wild to back it up next turn. Doesn't have a Soul of the Forest or Savage Roar or Branching Paths, though. If he had any of those cards, I think this decision would be a little bit easier.
Yeah, the follow-up is just so meh if you go for coin Giggling Inventor, because you go Power of the Wild, which is good. You're still a fair ways away from either Mossy Horror or Deathstalker Rexar, because those are both obviously coming down on turn 6. So Power of the Wild here with a hero power. Anything else decent off the top is not a bad outcome for you at all.
Now it's just really awkward, though. If he plays Power of the Wild, he can't play anything else this turn.
Maybe it's just a Tyrant then. You throw it down, you push everything else to face. Maybe you double trade into the
Playing Tyrant.
Terrascale.
Playing Tyrant for 5 mana when you have a Spreading Plague and an Ultimate Infestation in hand just feels really bad.
Yeah, I mean, what I was thinking of the line there was Arcane Tyrant into Saronite, Power of the Wild on the next turn.
Oh, okay, sure.
If you have a decent board surviving, that's respectable, I would say. You can push forward a lot of damage to face. If Power of the Wild were to be played on this turn, we could see everything face as well, or take out, you can kill off both the Terrascale and the Devil's Saw with a hero power as well, whilst keeping 2-3 Gigglings on the board. Or Neutron, sorry.
If he goes Power of the Wild, I quite like the middle ground, just trading the Giggling into the Terrascale and going face with everything else. But I do like this as well. United States still end up with 2 minions on the board. Next turn, they can follow up with Saronite Chain Gang, Power of the Wild. Playing Saronite Chain Gang that turn was a little bit awkward because it would have allowed the very easy trades for Singapore, but this way, they get the guaranteed value next turn.
Yeah, a lot of different ways to go about it, and I wouldn't necessarily have hated Arcane Tyrant that much, but I think this is probably a little bit better because it guarantees that you're going to have some kind of minion presence next turn. Then you follow up with Saronite Chain Gang, Power of the Wild on the following turn, and if somehow they go super wide on this turn, you can just go play Tyrant.
So, Derek, we were talking a little bit this morning about how Charged Devilsaur has made its way into a lot of these Hunter deck lists, and I want to talk to you about a different card that seems to have crept its way in, and that's Ziliax.
Yeah. Well, Ziliax is just in and out of every mid-rangey, slow-ish kind of deck. Sure. Like, we saw it in Miracle Rogue, in some of the playoffs lineups from some of the German players. Like you said, we see it in Hunter just because it's a fine card. Any deck that isn't an aggro deck usually will find a spot for Ziliax.
It's like a little neutral Alakir that also heals you.
If you like.
Yeah, I do like. Thank you. So that Saronite into Power of the World here is still an option. I don't really know if it's good enough, though.
The alternative being trade Plague Tyrant. You can get yourself 2 Scarabes.
Oh, yeah.
Does lead into Mossy Horror, exactly, which is less good.
But then Saronite Power of the Wild isn't that much better against Mossy Horror.
Yeah, that's true. Unless you go Chain Gang, Power of the Wild, double trade into the Terrascale Stalker, then only one of your minions is dying to Mossy Horror, which is not the end of the world.
Yeah, that's not so bad. I mean, I think the conclusion we're coming to is that Saronite Chain Gang probably does get played this turn with Power of the Wild. The other options just don't look that appealing.
I mean, the other option in Savage Raw is not bad on this turn. That's definitely worth considering because you can clear up most of what's going on here. And I think that was probably what they were considering. But I agree with you. It's probably worth getting this down just for the immediate power play.
And yeah, going to do what you said, or at least trade one of the Innovation ones in, which does still play around Mossy Horror to an extent.
Yeah, that's kind of cute.
Mossy Horror just doesn't look worth it this turn for Caius, if he had it in his hand.
Yes, if he had it, you are expecting Mossy Horror to be a lot more devastating, a lot more powerful later on because they have Spreading Plague. They do not have another Giggling Inventor because Kasayan is just playing the one copy.
And again, I was talking about this earlier when we were casting a Togwaggle Druid, but the same rule applies here with the Token Druid. Ideally, the United States would love to play Branching Paths on the same turn as they play the Spreading Plague to buff up the attack of all of the Scarabs, so they're at 3, so that Mossy Horror doesn't deal with them.
Very nicely as well, it's worth pointing out from just saying playing around the mind control tech, which you always have to be a little bit afraid of, especially more with the modern version of Token Druid with the Strong Shells and the Saronites, because you have beefier minions on board generally. If you play Violent Teacher and get a bunch of 1/1s, mind control tech is really the least of your worries, because they steal a 1/1,
yeah,
whatever.
Now that Spreading Plague might have to be tempting.
That Nourish, though,
Nourish into UI next
really
turn.
tempting, yeah. I don't think you can pass this up. You can even throw down the Tyrant, Value Trade, Hero Power. This is just Druid stuff. You just gotta love Druid stuff.
The Tyrant does feel a little bit complicated, though, because putting it behind a Spreading Plague and also putting it behind Ultimate Infestation even to have a bigger explosive turn following up has to be considered. I mean, I particularly am partial to putting it behind Spreading Plague, and then again, playing Branching Path the same turn, or Soul of the Forest, I guess, and getting all of the stats and buffs.
So as the board currently stands, that is a good spot, because you don't want to play Tyrant. It can just get value traded by the 5/5.
Yeah, and you want to UI the 5/5.
That's the thing. You want to UI the 5/5, but there is a taunt in the way. It would have to be some kind of Candle Shot or Flanking Strike to be able to get rid of that. It does then get value traded, which is bad. I think all things considered, I agree, you probably hold back the Tyrant, because even if you just go for it next turn with an Ultimate Infestation, it's still pretty good.
The United States disagree. They actually went ahead and played it. And I guess, again, following your logic, there is a taunt protecting it. In theory, it should survive this turn. Although, as we can see, that may not be the case. Not sure how Singapore are going to pass up playing Flanking Strike this turn. Like, Flanking Strike, Hero Power, play dead just looks too good.
Yeah, that is such a weird choice. Not a bad choice, but a difficult decision in playing the Arcane Tyrant, because the benefit is you have a 4/4 on board. If they can't kill it off, you can kill off something else. Maybe they play something else threatening that you need an immediate answer for. But if you save it back, that's another chance to go for Arcane Tyrant into Forbiddenous Floop on the Ultimate Infestation for an even stronger immediate play, if that was what you wanted to go for. This turn, however, is a little bit simpler.
It's also not as though United States was getting close to lethal on that. The little bit of damage from the Arcane Tyrant would finish the job. I don't know. But yeah, here we go. Ultimate Infestation into what we have Spreading Plague coming up soon. The Branching Paths is there in hand, ready to go, and there's a Savage Roar to follow up with on the next turn.
Has quite obviously worked out poorly this time for Just Saying, because there was a value trade from the Devil Saw on the Tyrant, and then it could also take out the 5/5 as well. So I guess for the United States, he played 0 mana for 5 health, I guess is the way you can look at it, which is not the worst trade in the world.
Okay.
But he would almost certainly rather have a Tyrant in hands now, I think. And this is kind of, just to set the stage, what casting the United States might be like. They're so good, we have to pick them up on everything. Like anything we think maybe could have been slightly optimized, I will be picking them up on it, because they know all these decks inside out, and I'm just wondering if maybe something they miss from these players. Obviously, we have more information due to having both hands, but these guys don't really make many mistakes.
Now, though, for the United States, I was going to say I like the look of Malfurion and Spellstone on the Savannah High Main to set up for an amazing Spreading Plague Branching Paths the following turn.
That sounds good to me.
Just putting more minions on the board while still reducing the amount of damage on the board.
Yeah, even clearing off the 3/3 here, I think is fine as well, because you want to be in a situation where you're not forced to go Spreading Plague.
Yeah.
Because if you find yourself something else, maybe Saronite or on the following turn, whatever, you want to have flexibility in your plays.
That double Spider Bomb is a little bit scary from Singapore, though. If they play one, magnetize the other one onto it, and then draw a Terror Scale, then there's bombs going everywhere.
Oh yeah, I guess it would.
It would go off twice.
Activate twice, yeah. I always forget that Spider Bomb has magnetic.
It's
to me, it's
really
just
relevant.
the 3 mana 2/2. Yeah.
Well, there was the game against the APM Priest where it very almost was relevant.
Yeah, I could have magnetized it onto an Annoyatron, and they missed it. It would have been a good play. I can't remember who it was that did that. But it's had its moment in the spotlight. Has old Spidey Bomb in the global games.
Yeah, even on the wall behind us today. That side.
Oh yeah. Not faithful Lumi on that side. He sucks. Just gets crushed by giant gorilla robot arms for smashing things.
Okay, Spider Bomb number 1 comes down, and the MC Tech is there for a Spreading Plague counter. Arcane Tyrant picked up by Saiyan, though. We're looking at a massive board if he does go ahead with it.
Bit of a tough turn here, because in terms of the beasts you are expecting to see from Singapore, I think it's just the fairly standard retinue of beasts in Double Grizzly, High Main, and King Crush. So now that you've seen the High Main, you know it's going to be the Crush or the Grizz.
Probably don't really want Katharina to die then.
You probably don't, but if you're putting up a big wall anyway, and they summon a Grizzly, it's bad, but it's not the end of the world. You just want to make sure you're not too vulnerable to Mossy Horror, I think is the only real consideration here for Just Saying, because I think he will be very much expecting a Mossy Horror to be in hand with how few cards have been willingly played by Caius.
I agree.
So in order to play around that, I would be very unsurprised to see Branching Paths for double attack, the classic anti-Mossy play.
I'd be quite annoyed if we didn't see it, as I've been banging on about this play what feels like all day. There we go, it happened.
Yeah, this was, I think, pretty much the only real play available to the United States. It sets up very possibly lethal on the next turn, because if even just 3 minions stick about here. That's 8 and 8, 16 just off of the Savage Roars.
However,
and then the hero power as well, and everything that's left over, it very quickly adds up.
with Spider Bomb, with MC Tech to not only remove a taunt from the board, but put it on Singapore's side of the board. Yep, to get a taunt.
This is a lot.
Yeah. Singapore can clean up a surprising amount of this. I should imagine that we'll see the 2/2s go in first so that the Spider Bomb destroys the minion it trades into and itself so that it guarantees the kill on another minion. Now there's only 3 minions left alive, and Caius has a taunt. 2 minions left alive now, thanks to the Katharina trade.
So if we were to see double Savage Roar, Spellstone and Hero Power phase, that's 9, 6 and 6, which is 12, 21, 24 damage, I believe?
Yeah, that's what I reached as well.
If I am not very much mistaken.
I came to the same number, so hopefully we got that right.
I wonder if Singapore... Oh, no, sorry. I was going to say I wonder if Singapore should have magnetized the Spider Bomb onto the other one. It would then not have died, because it would have had 4 health. I was thinking maybe if you can get a double Death Rattle activation, it would have been worth it, but yeah.
So now the big question for Saiyan is, does he go for it? Does he push that damage and set up for a swipe lethal next turn, maybe?
That's not bad. If you're not dying, then go for it. Like, kill them. I'm just going to count it one more time. 9 and 6 and 6. 12 and 11. 12 and 9 is 21. And then you have the 3 is 24.
Yep.
So they have to hit Rexar on the next turn, or kill you, or they're dead.
And Ziliax has already been played, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
Ziliax has been played. Yeah, good point. That is a good spot. But I think that's all the healing out of the deck. And with only 10, 13, 14, 15, 16 damage available.
My turn is not.
King Crush off the... Sorry, a Death Rattle activated to get King Crush still isn't even enough, I don't think.
Because of the taunt that's
because
in the
of
way.
the taunt in the way. Unless Spider Bomb... Oh no, that's still -2 damage.
Yeah.
I think this is pretty much, outside of Deathstalker Rexar, a lockout victory for United States. And that is not that card.
That is not that card. It's not going to do anything to prevent the swipe or even just the hero power from going off for the United States. I mean, Singapore will trade in the Katharina. They'll get a Witchwood Grizzly. That'll prevent the hero power, and they'll hope that that means there's no lethal. But as we've been saying, the swipe will do the job.
Just wondering if, well, Singapore just trying to think of any way they can survive if there's no burst damage through to hand. But this is a smelly play from Just Saying.
Wait, actually, no, King Crush would be lethal. Hang on a second. If Spider Bomb trades in 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and 8 from the King Crush, that would be lethal.
So he has to hit a 1 out of 3, where he's hit the 50-50 here, and then he has to hit the 1 out of 3. I guess I wasn't necessarily seeing the flanking strike off the top potential.
Okay, all right.
As the Witchwood Grizzly does come down. Wow.
Okay.
Good spot there, Mr. Falcon.
Not just a flanking strike, though. Like a Death Rattle activator, it turns out, would have done it.
Yep,
but,
fair point.
Whew, luckily, it's fine.
Wow.
USA have just about managed to get there. I still do think that Saiyan going face, that previous turn was correct.
I agree.
You know?
I absolutely.
Setting up the guaranteed 2-turn lethal, minus a Rexar being drawn, or I guess the King Crush being pulled. But there you go. Just Saiyan takes game number 1 of this series.
And that was a matchup that I was, I think, favouring Just Saying slightly, even
Yeah, me too.
if you think it's slightly favourable for Token Druid, because it's Just Saying piloting it, you probably have to bump a couple of extra percentage points his way because of his prowess with the deck. And then going into the next game is another match that we've seen a few times here at the Global Games, and I've been surprised each time because it's not a match that you oft see on ladder. It is the Control Priest up against the Shudderwock Shaman, which is a bit of a weird one. There's 2 alternate win conditions, one of which is stronger in the Shudderwock Shaman because it's like infinite damage basically and infinite healing, but one of which usually comes out quicker in the form of the Control Priest. Because it can just go Alexstrasza and Anduin burst damage to try and win the game before Shudderwock can even do its combo.
Yeah, I feel like our impression here at the HGG studio of this matchup has just been shifting a little bit over time, because I'm sure originally we just thought the Shaman was favoured.
Yeah.
And then we just, as we've seen these games right back from, I think, week 1, which was Kallax. He played the Shadowhawk, didn't quite remove the damage from the board, and then the Priest had the Mind Blast and the damage needed for lethal. Ever since then, we have seen the Priest winning this matchup and winning this matchup over and over again. And as you said, they just somehow tend to get there before the Shadowhawk Shaman usually draws all of the combo pieces.
Yeah, I think over and over again might be a little bit strong. We've only seen this a few times, a very sparse matchup here at the Global Games. I still would put my money on the Shadowhawk Shaman. I think all the tools are just there to fight back against everything the Priest is trying to do. If they stick a big minion in the form of Twilight Drake, you have Earthshock, Primordial Drake, you've got Hex. There's a whole litany of tools you have at your disposal to dispatch with all of their big minions. And then if the damage comes through the form of Anduin hero powers, with that repetitive 2 damage turn after turn, then you can just go with a Healing Rain or a Hagatha, heal all the way back up, and they just can't really do all that much to kill you through all that healing.
Litany.
Litany.
I like that word.
Me too.
Just noted it down because you said it and I liked it.
Great.
Thanks for that, Derek.
You're welcome.
But yeah, no, I do agree with you. It seems like on paper the Shadowhawk Shaman should be winning this usually. Even saving Healing Rains for after Alexstrasza's Healing Rains and Hexes can put a stop to that. And it's just weird because the Control Priest has won this several times, and I feel like my impression of the matchup has changed as a result of that. Like Mind Blasts and Anduin. If Anduin is slammed on 8 and Alexstrasza is played soon after, say turn 9 for example, then the double Mind Blast on turn 10 is very often lethal.
Yeah. If you draw Keleseth on 2, you might win. Join us next time for things that are true in Hearthstone.
Yeah. Yeah. If you draw Keleseth in Control Priest, you probably don't win.
If you drew it in, what was it, Tempo Rosakas Priest, then you're probably still losing because that deck sucked. Sorry, Gaskin.
The Dan Gaskin special. Oh, good memories from in China. But yes, the players are just getting ready to start. Just waiting for one of the players, I think. So let's have a very brief look at the games coming up after that. Odd Warrior versus Death Rattle Hunter. Now, we saw this earlier today.
Yeah, I'm glad we're seeing this again.
Norway playing the Odd Warrior and Norway winning the matchup.
Yes. Pretty handily as well. They were looking in control throughout the whole series of that game. They were talking afterwards about the decisions made by Ukraine, specifically in the Mulligan, where they didn't agree with high main being kept, because in Zorkthar's words, there are 3 cards in that matchup, Keleseth, Katharina, and Rexar, obviously, the only real cards you're looking for off the Mulligan. It's obviously not quite so simple, but that one should be I think closer than maybe we gave it credit for.
I mean, I agree. I think their whole game plan was a little bit weird for that matchup, just right down to the playing the egg, played it on turn 4. However, Norway did also tell us that they think the matchup is, as you just said, a lot closer than maybe everyone's giving it credit for. And apparently there's been rumblings from other pro players where they've been saying the same thing.
Yeah, it's an interesting matchup and one that I'm sure is far from fully explored, or at least we're going to be seeing a lot more in competitive Hearthstone, because Odd Warrior will always have its spot while there's aggro decks knocking about, or even while there's just Malagos knocking about, because it can get some very favourable matchups. And all the while there are control decks. Death Rattle Hunter will also have its spot. Despite the fact that mid-range Secret Hunter may have found a little bit more of a foothold in the current meta due to its decent anti-aggro capabilities, while still being able to prey on some of these slower decks like Druid, or any of them if you're board control apparently.
Well,
in the global games, it definitely feels like the Hunter is the premier strategy, the Death Rattle Hunter, sorry. But here we are, in the first game we were talking about, the Shadowhawk Shaman up against the Control Priest.
And now this is a very interesting hand from Frozen. Double Glacial Shard, which in many matchups he would want to keep, but no, he has to throw them away. Keeping the Keleseth, obviously, but it's card draw and it's combo pieces that he wants to find.
Yeah, you say obviously, but Sottle has ridiculed me so much now for suggesting even once that you throw away Keleseth. I can't remember in which matchup it was. I think it was like Shadowhawk Shaman against Control Mage, where I was arguing you're so favoured that the only way you lose it is if Shadowhawk is like your bottom card, or something like that. I can't remember exactly what it was. Basically, it was dumb. I agree. Keep Keleseth, play it on 2. It's a good strategy.
Great little anecdote there, Derek.
Yup. I mean, it's hardly a new one. Sottle is mean. Repeat.
Wow. That's a very aggressive start from Singapore.
Yep, pretty clearly setting out their game plan, which is, I think, telling us they feel fairly unfavored.
Yep.
Because generally, if you are playing an aggressive strategy with a control deck, you are feeling unfavored. You're not doing what you want to do with the deck.
That being said, there aren't really any better targets for the Twilight Acolyte anyway. There's Grumble, and that's sort of it. So just on turn 3, playing a 3-mana 3/4, yeah, that seems okay. Now, though, it gets a bit more complicated. Are Singapore going to want to just drop a 4-mana 3/3 on turn 4?
The tempo breaker.
Ugh.
It's not like it's pointless in this matchup, though, is it? If you... it's obviously better against the aggressive
Wow!
strategies, but if you can hit Chain Gang, if you can hit the Acolyte of Pain, the Manatide Totem, there's a lot of good outcomes. But clearly here, Equinox just wants to throw down the 4-mana 3/3. He is just playing Smork Priest here.
Frozen can't actually do anything that turn. He just plays the hero power, which in itself is obviously a point of contention. Equinox, though, starts with the Shadow Visions. Following his game plan, I do expect we'll see Pyromancer. There's a Mind Blast picked up as well. This game could be a little bit faster than we expected, as Singapore are going full SM Mork.
And this is not the way that we have seen this matchup be played previously in the global games. We've seen the Priest focusing on diluting their opponent's deck with Psychic Scream. We've seen them going for building up mid-sized big boards with Twilight Drake, trying to find Anduin as quick as possible. Clearly here, Equinox is just trying to play Zoo.
Does that mean he's just going to be dropping a Tempo Cabal Shadow Priest? He has 2 of them. I don't see why not.
It's in line with his strategy so far. Do you just play -2/-2 Boulder Fist Ogre here? It's really, really bad.
Yeah, Frozen can't really do anything next turn, though. He's just Volcanoed. He can hex the Cabal Shadow Priest, I guess, but if he's hexing that, I doubt Singapore are complaining too much. Alternatively, they could go with the Shadow Vision to try and get another Mind Blast, play the Cleric, which doesn't really achieve that much right now either.
With this strategy that Equinox is going for, I'd like to see him play Quest Rogue, where he's like, wait a second, this 1-mana quest is rubbish. It doesn't hit them for anything. Get rid of that, find the boars, find the deck hands, and just start hitting them as soon as possible.
Four-mana, 3/2 Elven Minstrel on 4. Yes, please. But here, if an Acolyte of Pain comes down, then Equinox will be rewarded for holding on to that Cabal Shadow Priest, as not only potentially gaining card draw himself, but also removing the card draw from Frozen's hand does seem like it's going to be pretty good.
Wow, Frozen just chilling here straight up, obviously not wanting to hex the Northshire Cleric quite yet, because the Hex is a good card in this matchup. He's running a little bit light on removal, it seems absurd to say, but he's played a Volcano on a pretty unassuming board. If a Twilight Drake were to come down and then a Primordial Drake a turn later, you need to have answers to them.
Well, the interesting dance that we might see now is Equinox could play one Cabal Shadow Priest, then Frozen, thinking he is safe from Cabal Shadow Priests, could drop an Acolyte of Pain, and then the other one would appear and steal it.
Ah.
It's where
You're debating Shadow Priest.
But it's where the mind games really begin, because then Frozen will say, well, hang on a second, why didn't you just play that last turn?
It seems oddly flavorful for Cabal Shadow Priest to be playing mind games. Just to be clear, Singapore are not playing the card mind games as well.
It wouldn't be
in case
good.
you've forgotten that card existed.
It wouldn't be good against Shadowwalk Shaman.
It wouldn't be good against any deck.
It would be okay against Big Priest.
Fair point, my friend. But now the Acolytes finally coming down in combination with the Volcano. Frozen here quite happily playing around the potential for the Cabal Shadow Priest to steal his card. He even has the perfect amount of draw to get himself up to 9 cards, I believe, and then will not be overdrawing 1 iota.
Singapore with the Night Scale Matriarch tech that we've seen a few times recently.
Oh, yes.
It's nuts with Divine Hit.
This is the spiciest of boys.
My children.
And it's going to get hexed.
Yes, it is going to be instantly turned into a frog.
But until it gets hexed, it is definitely the spiciest of boys. Just enjoy it being on the board for a moment.
I do like Nightscale Matriarch. I am somewhat sad that it hasn't found more of a foothold in the meta. Because it is just very cool. I like the stats on it as well. It just feels good to play a 4/9 because it does a lot of damage. It's hard to deal with.
No, I agree. For 7 mana, that's quite reasonable. High health total, decent attack.
Frozen here clearly considering alternate lines other than the obvious hex that we were looking at. There's no Divine Spirit in a fire or anything like that that you need to be afraid of. It's just the Mind Blastos. So maybe Frozen's looking at just Grumble, it would seem here, to throw it down onto the board and start pressuring your opponent. It gets the combo active a little bit quicker, but yeah, like this is definitely the scariest minion you're going to be seeing.
United States haven't made any real progress on their Shadowwalk yet anyway, so there shouldn't really be any hurry to play Grumble.
Yeah.
Maybe if you draw a Sour Knight, they'll want to play Sour Knight and then Grumble the Sour Knight back to the hand.
That's fair.
There are better uses of the card.
Or possibly Zola then Grumble, because due to the fact that Hagatha has not been played yet, hand space issues are much less of a concern. So going Zola Grumble and then Shadowwalk 1 mana Zola, if it fails, is a very reasonable play to be making, I think.
So Singapore just took the healing totem with Cabal Shadow Priest, which is a very weird play at first. And then you spot the Northshire Cleric sitting in Sequinox's hand. And you think, maybe there's something that could work here? Though probably not.
That would be pretty sick. I would love to see that. The old card factory from back in the day with Northshire Cleric and healing totem. I doubt it will have much of an effect.
No, I don't think so.
But
either.
you never know.
There's no Spirit Lash or anything in the deck, is there? No.
So the play I am definitely looking at first of all here is Zola Grumble. It gets you a decent minion onto the board, which is only really vulnerable, I think, to Shadow Reaper Anduin. I guess here instead going with a route that is somewhat more vulnerable, I guess, to... sorry, looking like he was playing Zola there, vulnerable to the Shadowwalk failing. But with this line of play, he's just developing onto the board, clearly setting up for a Lightning Storm, I would imagine, on the following turn. And this is basically the main reason less vulnerable to Shadow Reaper Anduin off the top.
Frozen just needs Sour Knight here, and he's good to go. Scary thought, that.
Sobering, indeed.
Obviously, he needs to play the Sour Knight and play the Grumble
Yeah.
first, but it's one card that needs drawing. Meanwhile, Singapore, despite the aggressive start, still nowhere near lethal just yet. However, Alex Straza, this turn, with the help of the Cabal Shadow Priest, would put Frozen down to 11.
Yeah, you do want to make sure that the time between Alex Straza and killing your opponent with Anduin damage is as small as possible. You want to condense that damage very heavily, which means you want to do it after you've played Anduin, ideally. It makes it a lot more consistent, your game plan. Because if you play Alex Straza, hit them for 4 to bring them down to 11, it's good, but they very likely heal up. Then you hit them again, they remove, they heal up. Your Mind Blast are still just stranded in hand, and they're back up to 30.
Here we go, card factory time. One card drawn. Third Mind Blast.
There we go. Okay, that's a little bit more like it.
Now the gap
second
between Alex Straza and killing the opponent could be pretty short.
Yeah, if we were to see Alex Straza smack him for 5.
Obviously, healing Rain would still be a bit of a nuisance for Sequinox. But there is the Sour Knight from United States. Sour Knight, Grumble, Zola, Life Drinker already played, and Shadowwalk. Frozen is going to be taking this game into overdrive soon. The real question is, how does he do it? I don't think he quite has the hand space to go Sour Knight, Grumble, and get both of them back.
If he could kill off his Ooze first, then that would be a possibility. As it currently stands, I believe that would send him up to 10 cards in hand.
Can't kill the Ooze, though.
Yeah, so this turn, what's the alternative then, I guess? You could look at mind control tech, I suppose.
I like it.
Steal something juicy. Maybe if that fails, follow up with a lightning storm.
Try not to steal the healing totem back. There we go.
There we go. And yeah, Serenite Chain Gang here I think is fine to go without the Grumble.
Yeah.
Because going Zola Grumble is arguably even better.
Yep.
Or just Zola on your Chain Gang. There are a lot of ways that you can go about this. I guess is the point to be made that maximize your chances of Shudderwock not failing.
But yeah, it's only Grumble remaining now as Sequinox is desperately digging through his deck before he plays the Psychic Scream, which I assume is going to be coming down next.
I would also assume so.
Trying to clog up Frozen's deck, trying to prevent him from drawing the Shudderwock or the Grumble. But they are both already there in the hand.
Yeah, Dustbreaker doesn't quite do enough. You're shuffling back cards into your opponent's deck that they kind of want. Like Zola and Chain Gangs are pretty good, but I guess any card that pushes that potential Shudderwock one card further down in the deck is perfectly fine.
How long can this go on?
And here it is, the play that I was maybe not necessarily expecting because I was looking more heavily at Grumble's Zola Grumble. This, however, has the benefit of not having to worry about 9-mana Shudderwocks being bounced back to hand. You're just much more likely to get that 1-mana boy, which you want so dearly.
I mean, this is now such a low percentage chance of the Shudderwock whiffing. If both of these Saranites come down, that's 4 Saranites, plus Zola, plus Grumble.
And this is a point that I think it's worth saying, that I'm fairly happy that Dirty Rat and Shudderwock never actually met each other, because that would have been fairly upsetting. I think it's fair to say. A lot of unhappy matches would have been decided by it. As much as Sequinox, I'm sure, is wishing he could play Dirty Rat. I'm glad we don't have to worry about that nonsense.
Now, Frozen has drawn another Zola from the Psychic Scream, but he's just going to go ahead. Chances are a little bit lower if he plays the Shudderwock now. We've had 2 Saranites, 1 Zola, 1 Grumble. So chances, while slightly lower, still not bad.
And if he does just go for Shudderwock here, the way to actually deal with that, which is obviously the scary part, is if it goes in the wrong order and your opponent bounces it back, oh sorry, deals with it. What can go wrong? They could go for not double Duskbreaker. I think it's buffed up to a 7/7 anyway. They could go for Psychic Scream, which means you get it back to your deck eventually, but maybe you're taking too much pressure there. I think I agree with this line of play of just going for maximum Saranites onto the board, maximum Shudderwock activation chance, basically such an incredibly slim chance of it going wrong in any way.
4 Saranites and Grumble and Zola. The only way it goes wrong is if both Grumble and Zola activate after all 4 Saranites. It just shouldn't happen.
Also worth pointing out, the Earthshock on the Acolyte clearly coming down to free up hand space for all these Shudderwocks that will be coming back to hand, I'm sure. I believe it's only 1 life drinker that's been played as well. It hasn't been Zola'd or Grumbled back. So the damage won't be coming through that quickly for Frozen, at least in the first couple of turns. But once he plays 10 Shudderwocks in a turn, that's basically just lights out.
Yep. That's still 30 damage as long as it happens. And 10 Shudderwocks in 1 turn is much more likely if Hagatha hasn't been played, which it hasn't. So I guess the only issue I can see from here is if United States Saranite Chain Gangs don't get dealt with, then there won't be the space to play the Shudderwock and bounce the Shudderwock back. It's kind of awkward. Frozen's going to be pushing a lot of damage with the Saranites, don't get me wrong, but it's not going to be allowing the Shudderwock combo.
And now Frozen has been brought down to 18 health, which means, short of a healing spell of some kind, Singapore do have lethal next turn with 19 damage, I believe, available from hand.
Yeah, that's scary.
Clearly we can see there are a multitude of ways that United States can quite happily heal up here. Maybe we see Shudderwock on this turn. It does, however, bounce back a lot of gubbins that you really do not want in your hand anymore.
It means it can't bounce itself back.
That is correct.
Which would be a problem.
So we're going to see Electra Healing Rain on this turn.
And this is what I was saying a moment ago. Like, if Frozen... If Sequinox doesn't deal with Frozen Saranites, yeah, okay, Frozen can push, 10 damage per turn, but he can't play the Shudderwocks.
He cannot. which, again, why I was suggesting Electra into healing rain. Yes, you lose the value of Electra, but you just want it out of your hand right now to hope that you can either pressure your opponent out of the game with your minion damage, or you draw Hagatha, and then you can destroy your own board of stuff, then go for the Shuttlewalk on the next turn. And this is a situation that I have not really seen before in Shuttlewalk very often at all, where you don't really have the ability to kill your opponent quite yet, but you also don't have the ability to play your win condition because you have so much rubbish on the board.
Yeah. We're looking at 14 damage for the United States here, which just isn't lethal yet. Singapore, can they set up a 2-turn lethal? Yeah, well, with Alex Straza.
If they do go for Alex Straza, though, all of your chain gangs trade in.
Yeah, and then Shuttlewalk does its thing.
And then you do Shuttlewalk, you heal back up to 21.
But what choice do they have?
Yeah, I agree. This is the play for Sequinox. He has to just hope that Shuttlewalk isn't there, but clearly we are going to see all these minions trading in, I guess probably the Acolyte as well, but basically a whole lot of stuff trading in.
Okay, Shuttlewalk goes off. If Frozen can play 2 Shuttlewalks this turn, then
fine.
yes, he heals for 6.
So that's what it comes down to.
If he only plays 1, then he only goes up to 18 health, and yeah, the triple Mind Blast, double hero power, 19 damage will actually kill Frozen this turn.
He has, though, such a good chance of this going in the right order. It's kind of not even funny.
It has to be Grumble, not Zola, so that does reduce the chances a little bit. But it's a 1 in 5.
Here we go, though. There's Zola first.
No!
There's Grumble as well. I beg your pardon, my friend. What? I think that's just game, Falco.
Again, with 4 Saranites and 1 Grumble, it was a 1 in 5, and Frozen lost it. Unfortunately, with only 18 health, while he may feel a little bit safe, we're seeing it again. Triple Mind Blast with 2 hero powers is 19 damage. Singapore are going to even the score here.
And I believe this is where you are supposed to type NA LOL in the chat.
No, they're just going to spam bits.
Oh yeah, of course.
That's what they're going to do.
I mean, what do you say in a situation like this? It just didn't go Frozen's way. It happens sometimes. They should have won that game in all likelihood. But on the other side, Sequinox did give himself that out by playing very aggressively throughout that whole game. It meant he got that chip damage in turn after turn after turn, which means he represented lethal before he played Alex Straza, which is a big deal in the Control Priest, because after you represent lethal, they have to heal, then you Alex Straza them, then you represent lethal once again. So it was a good spot there for Sequinox to try and find himself that position, but hate to say it, it happens sometimes, unlucky to the United States, but they are still in a decent spot, I would say.
It's just great. Equinox had such a specific strategy right from turn 2 where he went Ooze into Twilight Acolyte and just kept the pressure going. The score is 1-1 between Singapore and the USA. When we come back, we will be finishing this series, the winner of which will be 1 game away from going to BlizzCon. Which teams are going to be? Find out after this. Update hot off the press. If you've been donating bits, you've done it. We've reached the first community milestone of 8 million. So congratulations, everyone who's donated at least 700 bits has just unlocked 2 more Hearthstone packs.
Yeah, congratulations. Also, just very exciting. They've announced caster ranks being added to Hearthstone, so that's a very nice bonus for us as well.
We now rank 50 casters, not rank 55 casters.
Oh, God.
Excellent.
The memes, Falcone. Think of the memes.
If you don't know what we're talking about, you should go ahead and check out the Play Hearthstone Twitter account, the new blog post, all of that fun stuff. New cards being added to the classic set. Nice little surprise for us as we quickly checked the social medias on our break. But back to the good stuff. It's Singapore versus the USA. It's 1-1. And coming up next is going to be that matchup we've been looking forward to. We've seen it once today. We're going to see it again. It's Odd Warrior versus Death Rattle Hunter.
And I would still put USA in the lead here, as I would have done in the last series, before they lost that 1 in 5, with the Shuttlewalk, which we will not mention anymore. But Zorklar was saying he thinks this matchup is a little bit closer than people give it credit for when he won it, or sorry, well, when Hunter Race won it on his team earlier on in the day as the Odd Warrior. However, this is USA that we're talking about here on the Hunter, probably, in my opinion, right up there, one of the, if not the best team here in the Hearthstone Global Games. So I think if anyone can lock down this favourable series, it's going to be the Americans.
They're going to hard mulligan for Deathstalker Rexar, and they're going to build some beasts, and they're going to get the job done. things still looking good for both teams, actually. It's not looking like there's a particular favourite on either side. After this matchup, it's going to be Aggro Mage versus Even Lock. That's Singapore on the Aggro Mage and USA on the Even Warlock. After that, Singapore on the Even Warlock and USA on the Even Paladin, which we're going to have to find out a little bit more about later.
Yeah, two matchups that I would probably put slightly in Singapore's favour. The Even Warlock can struggle against the aggressive playstyle of the Aggro Mage because there's just too much damage coming through to your face. The Even Paladin, I would imagine, is going to be kind of weak against Even Warlock because you've still got Defile, Hellfire, all those really powerful board clear cards. But even then, Even Paladin is not a card that we see all that much in the current meta, so maybe they can pull something out of the bag.
Yeah, well, we are just going to jump in to game number 3. It's Katsukari versus Muzzy. It's Odd Warrior versus Death Rattle Hunter. And here we see Muzzy within his opening hand. He has the egg. He has the egg activator. And I think there's a chance that he doesn't keep either of them. He probably keeps the egg still.
It is a really nice way to start off your early pressure with a bang. Again, though, this matchup is just always going so late on in the game. Always, you kind of want Terrascale Stalkers for after Deathstalker Rexar. Clearly here the United States saying, though, these cards are just good. We don't want to fall behind on board too heavily. You can't just completely ignore board control in this matchup. You do have to have some kind of a plan as to how you're going to be approaching the mid game. Because if they do just dominate the board with Dynamatics, Dire Horns, maybe Giggling Inventors, you might be falling a little bit behind.
That's true. That's true. So Muzzy has found himself with the early game board that he needs, or early game hand that he needs rather, which will lead into the early game board that he needs. Again, we're going to find ourselves in that situation where he could play dead on the egg, but probably shouldn't. Katharina is present in the hand. That's at the very least going to be a better play dead target. Card we should probably talk about a little bit, Derek, is Azalina in the Odd Warrior. And you know I've played a lot of Odd Warrior, and I love Azalina. I think it's one of the best cards actually in Odd Warrior decks, full stop. But it's difficult to play because they have to empty their hand of the good stuff first, so as quickly as possible, and also time it right, maybe get a Build-A-Beast or something added to the hand.
Yeah. If it was just 1 mana less, you could potentially go coin Azalina on 5 to try and snipe Deathstalker Rexar. Which obviously puts you in a pretty good spot because the rest of your deck is probably better in a Rexar off. But the Devilsaur Egg now, I would imagine, has to be the standard play here for Muzzy, just to get a little bit of pressure onto the board. Maybe we see actually what Ukraine did earlier on today, where they hold back the egg on this turn and then go egg play dead next turn to play around the owl, so it can't get the it can't get rid of the death rattle.
But we end up in the same position again, don't we? The egg play dead, the play dead being used on the egg. I mean, I guess it's not as bad as it sounds. It is just 1 play dead being used up. But there's Deathstalker Rexar. Muzzy has found the card that actually wins the matchup. So yeah, just gotta go ahead.
Yeah.
Make a big board, make sure he survives until turn 6. Doesn't really matter anymore.
This is just a cool trick I'm learning as well, that when you want to go egg play dead, just do it on 4 in these slow matchups, like against Odd Warrior, where it doesn't make much difference and you're afraid of an owl. Just do it a turn later. A cute play if you're not going to be using your mana next turn. Like, obviously, if you wanted to go egg this turn, play dead Terrascale on the next turn, you want to use your mana with egg on turn 3. But if you're not planning on doing that, just make sure you're less vulnerable to the owl or the fiery war axe that we see in hand there for Singapore. Not a card oft put in Odd Warrior, but I believe Purple was playing it over the weekend in his playoffs lineup, which he very nearly qualified with.
Nice to see again for Singapore, several of the guys gathered together playing some Hearthstone amongst friends with a, is that an ice hockey table in the background? A table hockey table, I mean?
I think that's a pool table,
it is a pool
or a
table,
snooker table, depending on where in the world you're from or what game you play, I guess. You ever played billiards?
I haven't, actually.
Yeah, it's quite good fun, actually. You feel quite posh as well when you're playing it, quite old-timey.
So Muzzy does have a very aggressive play available to him now if he wants to. He can drop the Keleseth and play the Terra Scale, making another 5-5, making a 3-3, making a 2-2. Just generally having a big board.
I think I like holding on to the Terra Scale here. Like, I think you definitely want to play Keleseth.
Yeah.
You definitely want to lead into Terra Scale Stalker. But you do want to have activators ready to go for your cube later on. Because, you can afford to be greedy in this matchup. You don't have to throw down these activators just on the egg. I would hold back the Terra Scale here. If they decide to go for the play of just going for it and going for immediate tempo, I will gladly bow my head and say they know this matchup a little better than I do. But I think you want to be a little bit greedier than that in this matchup.
The thing that is going for Muzzy, though, is that unlike Ukraine earlier, like they've got this hand that will just keep on going. They've got the Rexar. Wow, no Keleseth. That I am surprised by.
Yeah, clearly playing around mind control tech, which is why you don't want to play both.
But they've got the Rexar to curve into. They've got Katharina, which will pull out a Witchwood Grizzly or a Savannah Highmane on turn 8. They're going to keep building beasts. Like, I mean, we've mentioned it a lot, but Deathstalker Rexar really does make a big difference in this map.
Oh, all the difference in the world. It's just so crucial, as we saw from Ukraine earlier on. They just ran out of stuff, quite simply. They did not have the necessary refill to pull things back. And we are now going to see a nice, easy board clear for Katsukari. Muzzy was hoping to get either one of two things, a lot of damage through to face with these early Devil Saws, or soak up a board clear, which he has done. And that is a very valuable board clear that he has just taken away from Singapore, which means later on, if he goes for making a big Builder Beast, maybe cubing it and play-deading it, or Terra Scale Stalkering it, there is no Reckless Flurry to sweep up that big board now.
But here we go, Muzzy prepared to hunt down Katsukari forever with Deathstalker Rexar. And now Katsukari, he's going to want to make as aggressive a play as possible. He's got this opening. There's nothing on Muzzy's board. But unfortunately, being an odd warrior, the best he can do is drop a 5-mana 3/6.
It's really not bad, but I mean, obviously it's not going to get the job done. It's just trying to contest the board here, fight back against any Builder Beasts that United States can throw down. Because Muzzy, I imagine, unless he has very pressing matters to attend to, will be pressing that hero power button every single turn of this game.
One of the advantages I found that Odd Warrior can get over Death Rattle Hunter is actually a deck card count. In many cases, the Hunter plays trackings early to try and dig through to get their XR and does end up running out of cards. However, as you can see here, it's 20/20 for these guys' remaining cards in their deck, so that's not going to be happening for Katsukari this game.
It's 2020. How long was I sleeping last night? Classic bit of banter. As the Bloat Bat is taken as the first option, it's just one of universally the best beasts on the first pool of beasts that you are offered, because you can get a complete board clear if you get it with Poisonous, you can get a whole bunch of life gain if you get it with a lifesteal minion on the second option. You pretty much always take it when you are offered it, unless you get maybe Tundra Rhino as a better option. There's not many that outclass the old Bloat Bat.
A good old stealthy Tundra Rhino can do a lot of work.
It is weird, though, that such a, I guess, objectively bad card as Exploding Bloat Bat, because it has never seen play in Hearthstone, ever. Not even in a single Hunter deck, so far as I'm aware, at least in top-tier play. But it just finds its spot so beautifully in these Builder Beasts, and it allows for such cool combinations. I really love that it's in there with the rest of them.
I mean, that's the thing, right? It's where you mesh together two mechanics that very clearly haven't been put together for a reason.
Yeah.
Look at Dreadscale. If you could have Dreadscale with Poisonous, it would be the same effect.
Good point. I had to think very hard for what Dreadscale was there, because I didn't play it when it was in Standard.
Nor did anyone else.
Yeah.
What now? Unity, precision, perfection.
All right, Singapore able to continue controlling the board for now, but it's not going to last that long. Katharina now available to be played for Muzzy, though maybe there's merit in waiting until turn 10 and being sure to hero power every single turn. There's also merit to just slamming down Katharina and putting a lot of stats on the board immediately.
Yeah, you do want to be careful about pulling any cards from your deck at all.
True.
Because that is just a turn closer that you are to fatigue. However, like you said, this is going to be such a big play onto the board here, even getting the Keleseth buff as well. I think sacrificing one card, potentially two being pulled from your deck, is fine here because of the immediate tempo play that it makes. And every piece of removal that you are baiting out from your opponent will pay such huge dividends later on when you stick that one final minion. That's all it takes. One big minion can just win you the game right at the end.
Yeah, I mean, yes, Muzzy has lost a couple cards from his deck, or rather one card now and another card later from his deck, but it's just not looking like it's going to matter too much. He's in such a good position. Getting Rexxar down that early, it should mean, in theory, that Singapore do not survive for long enough to use Fatigue as a tool.
It's the Super Collider overriding the old Fiery War Axe to try and swing this board back for Katsukari. Super Collider, as in any matchup, is very good. It's just going to do a great job of clearing up all these big minions. This card on its own is basically what gives Odd Warrior enough removal to outlast all these decks. Even ones that have such absurd amounts of value like the Death Rattle Hunter that we see here. Even this, if you dodge the Deathstalker Rexxar on turn 6, then you can just quite easily outvalue them.
Yeah.
However, if they do hit Deathstalker Rexxar on 6,
you're in trouble.
It becomes a little bit harder, especially when they get Raptor Hatchling there, which shuffles another card back into the deck. That is absolutely fantastico.
It's not even necessarily got to be their pick. Again, with 17 cards still remaining in the deck, I don't see how this game gets to Fatigue.
I don't think it has to be their pick, but I think it will be their pick. I really like shuffling in because even if it doesn't go to Fatigue, I suppose it's a good point to bring up, is that the most likely thing that happens for United States for them to lose the game is not that they go to Fatigue and get run out of stuff, it's that they lose board and can't bring it back.
Okay.
Because Katsukari could go for some kind of a big mind control tech play, or maybe brawl into Direhorn Matriarch. There are some big plays that can be made by Singapore if Muzzy isn't careful. However, it could go to Fatigue. The other options weren't even that good.
Yeah, that's
so I think just playing it here is fine.
Actually going to hold on to it and ensure that only 2 minions remain on the board. Obviously, Super Collider can get a lot of work done here if it hits into the 3/3 Wolf. It deals with Katharina. Katharina will be pulling out another beast from the deck, which is potentially a reason to have not played the Zombies that turn, actually, to prevent that beast being put into the deck and then summoned by Katharina. Obviously, Muzzy wants to get Savannah High Main or Witchwood Grizzly if possible.
Have you noticed that Super Collider, when you say it, it makes you sound like you're from Somerset?
Super Collider.
Super Collider. You said it weird a couple of times. Maybe you don't usually say it like that, but it just made me chuckle.
What now?
There's actually no High Main in United States' Hunter deck. We've seen that a couple of times today.
Oh, yeah.
I guess Ziliax maybe replaced the High Main.
I was wondering if they were playing the...
Deathwhistle?
No, the Stranglethorn Tiger.
Oh.
I know Muzzy really likes that card. I've seen it in a few of his decks over the months recently. Clearly, he has not brought it here today, but that is definitely a spicy Muzzy tech that we sometimes see.
There was a long period of time where Stranglethorn Tiger was actually like the premium 5-drop. I think it was after the first standard rotation, because many of the 5-mana cards like Sludge Belcher and Lotheb got rotated out and left this massive void. So everyone just went, oh, Stranglethorn Tiger goes in every deck now.
Thankfully, Giggling Inventor is here to save the day. Yeah, interesting options here. Night Prowler is, I think, fairly likely to get the activation at some point in this game, so it wouldn't be a bad pick. But whenever I'm seeing Deathstalker Rexxar, the hero power being used, Gentle Megasaur is picked more often than I would expect it to be. I guess just the 4-mana 5/4 stats, as a medium-sized body, you can usually play something else in addition with it, is generally deemed good enough by the players.
Yeah. I have to admit, I don't like the Night Prowler very much. I can't think that I've ever seen it proc.
Okay. I have, but not often.
Yeah, it would have to be like following Singapore playing a Reckless Flurry and then passing.
Which could happen.
Yeah.
Ooh, so United States here feeling they are warranted in using the Turret Scale Stalker, which is a really valuable tool to them. However, I guess the fact that they got Deathstalker Rexar so early on means that the cubes in their deck are good, but not essential to their game plan. They can still, I think, fairly easily play a couple minions at a turn. And if they do play cube in with Terra Scale Stalker as well, that actually necessitates the fact that they will be vulnerable to a mind control tech, because you'll have the cube, the Terra Scale, and the 2 minions. So maybe they were just planning on never doing that and never being vulnerable to mind control tech for the rest of the game.
I believe they still have a Play Dead left in the deck
Yes,
anyway,
so.
and that doesn't necessarily get beaten by mind control tech. So I don't mind this, and as you said, there's still so many beasts yet to be built. The cubes will get value one way or another. I guess the Spider Bomb was necessary last turn because there wasn't another clean way of dealing with Baku. Like, Hunter's Mark had nothing to go with it. It would have had to be a trade-in with the Witchwood Grizzly, which didn't feel ideal when United States want to be pushing damage to the face if possible. And wow, that was a snap pick of the Omega Defender.
Yeah.
It is a 4-mana 12/6.
I think you'd quite happily take that. Now you've hit the 10-mana threshold. This card is pretty blooming good. Usually. Here it just gets spider-bombed the living heck out of it. Maybe. Muzzy could consider trying to keep this spider bomb alive, because if Katsukari has the Beryllium Nullifier, is that the name of the card?
Yep.
Beryllium Nullifier? I was thinking if that was the GVG card for a second. Beryllium Nullifier or Mechathune or Bulldozer, any of the big mechs here off of the Omega Assembly, he does want to have that Spider Bomb intact, ready to go to take it out.
That is true. Owl does allow him to make short work of that Omega Defender anyway, at least reduces the attack down from 12 back to 2. It's strange, you'd think that a 4-mana 12/6 would see more play than this card does.
Apparently, from what I'm reading, I read an article on Arena, Omega Agent, I believe it's called, the Warlock card. Apparently it's really good in Arena. That's like finding its spot there. And I would guess that all the Omega cards are pretty good in Arena. Nice slow format usually.
Omega Agent is a card that I really did expect to be good in Constructed as well.
Really? Yeah, all the Omega cards are in a weird spot. The one that I thought would see play but hasn't found a spot is Omega Mind for the Shaman.
Oh,
I was thinking that with Lightning Storm, Volcano, that's just an extra whole bout of healing. And healing for a while has just been good in Hearthstone against the Malagos Shamans, the Malagos Druids, Aggro Mages, Odd Rogues, stuff like that. It's very valuable to have. And it's just a 2-mana 2/3. Who knows? Maybe it will see play. Maybe I'm an idiot. Who knows?
They're all started quite well. Omega Medic is a 3-mana 3/4. As Katsukari needs to try and work out how he's going to deal with this board. That Witchwood Grizzly is kind of in the way at the moment.
Yeah, this is the power of Katharina. It means for the entirety of this game, Muzzy has just so easily been able to protect all of his minions, get his opponent's health total nice and low.
That's unfortunate.
Yeah, Singapore really wanted that Skaterbot to be able to take out the Grizzly. Now 4 more damage is going to be going through to face. Dr. Boom has not been played, so the Rover can't attack through. It's a lot of damage the United States are chunking through with here.
That is a good point, actually. Where's Dr. Boom? It's like, one of the things Zorkthar was saying earlier is that the reason this matchup isn't that bad for the Warrior is that Dr. Boom can sort of compete with Deathstalker Rexar, but there's no Dr. Boom in sight.
Well, it can compete with Deathstalker Rexar in terms of value, not necessarily in terms of immediate board presence and answers. Dr. Boom, I think at the moment, is a little bit too slow. Singapore need to be a little bit quicker, clear off the board, then worry about stuff like Boom and value.
They also need to draw it first.
Yes, sure.
Better Hydra plus a 3-drop. I didn't catch what they were.
And this whole game so far, or at least turns 8 through to now, have been the legacy of Muzzy playing Katharina, just on curve. Because while there is an obvious downside in you get yourself 2 cards closer to fatigue over the course of this game, the obvious upside is he has been ahead on board throughout. It hasn't even been close. He's been so far ahead versus what Singapore has been trying to do, which means that they are having to expend so many minions, so many removal cards, which would be good after Dr. Boom comes down.
Okay, maybe I'm exaggerating, but Dynamatic, which will deal at least 4 points of damage independently to this Bittertide Hydra.
Oh, right. I wasn't sure where we were going with that. Yep, that's 12 damage through to the face. Your reward is a swifter death. You haven't got a perfect victory, or your opponent hasn't.
No, there's nothing fancy he can do here, really, with that.
I guess it's time to check in with our favourite girl, Azalina Soul Thief, as it is always important to do throughout the game. Is there anything that could make it a little bit more palatable for Singapore if they were to throw it down right now? If they got... oh no, wait, they couldn't go coin flanking strike because the coin would go.
Yeah, if they're playing the coin, they need to play a minion first, then play the coin, and then play Azalina.
It's not worth it. It's always just worth making sure maybe it's worth it.
That's about the best result that Katsukari could have gotten with the Bittertide Hydra on the board. Still 23 health remaining, and Muzzy's just laughing at it! Muzzy doesn't care!
Of course Muzzy doesn't care. Have you ever met him? There are a few things that Muzzy cares about. He is the chillest of dudes. I'll tell you one thing that he does care about, though.
What does Muzzy?
Memes.
Memes, yeah.
Another thing that Muzzy cares about, winning games of Hearthstone. Thankfully, he's quite good at that.
When you said memes, I honestly thought you were going to say me, as you.
That's what I said. I was just saying me twice.
Ah. Muzzy's surprisingly close to lethal here. He's got 20 damage available to him this turn if he wants it.
Oh yes, very close indeed. Getting the Shore down on the board now means Singapore kind of has to deal with this right now, lest they be completely overwhelmed on board.
Nice try there. It's not how Rush works.
Worth a shot, I suppose. And from any point on here, if he can get himself a crackling Razormaw off of the Build-A-Beast for Wind Fury, that should pretty much just be lights out. The Silence is there to deal with the Diehorn Matriarch.
Singapore may need to play a minion and play Brawl this turn.
Yeah.
Just need to try and get rid of that Bittertide Hydra, if at all possible.
We could see Ironbeak Brawl Hero Power, I guess, is the simple play.
Yeah.
If you think it's your only chance of winning the game, we could just see Diehorn Hero Power. Oh, sorry, Diehorn Brawl.
Oof.
Like, if you're losing anyway, why not?
If the Bittertide Hydra survives, even a Hero Power will not get Katsukari out of range of that King Crush. It will just be lethal. Is there anything from Muzzy's hand that Singapore could use this turn? No, I really don't think there is. All right, Meat Wagon Brawl. He can coin out the Hero Power if he wants to next turn.
Yeah.
All right, well, that's not the worst possible news.
It's not good news, though. And
Katsukari survives another turn.
I don't know. I think what this play says to me as Katsukari is, if I lose this brawl, if Houndmaster Shaw survives this brawl, I can win this game. Which is, I think, a somewhat reasonable assumption because he does have Diehorn into Faceless, but I'm not convinced by it. And if he was thinking, this is my only chance to win this game, my last shot, I would have preferred Diehorn Brawl. Because if you lose, you're losing either way.
That's true. There's just when you look at the difference of value now between the hands, and even then, the problem with Azalina is that, yeah, she can take a lot of value from the Hunter, but you lose so much tempo in the process. I think Azalina is a really well-designed card, actually. The fact that she costs 7 mana That is a real downside to what is an incredibly powerful effect.
Yeah, for sure. So now the options available to Singapore are somewhat limited, and this is a good point to come back to United States' game plan. I don't think there's been a single point throughout the course of this game where they've had more than 3 minions on board. And they've been playing to that. They've been playing their Death Rattle activators not on cube. And maybe that's just the way you play this matchup. Because always when I see, or I shouldn't say always, generally when the Warrior wins this matchup, it goes one of two ways. One, they just don't find Rexar and they get outvalued. The second way is big tempo swings in the later stages of the game.
Sure.
If you can go for MC Tech, and steal a whole bunch of minions onto your side, and the Hunter can't immediately respond, you can find yourself relatively easily as the Warrior with lethal.
Right.
Yeah, this is a pretty cute play.
Yeah, you deal with the biggest minion. Still hanging in there for the time being, I think.
So if we were to see Hunter's Mark into...
Well, if he trades in the egg first, the 5/5 does get rushed.
Oh yeah, okay,
so that can deal with the taunt, and then we've got
13 damage.
Yeah,
I believe, unless the King Crush came after the Rexar. I think it's just an 8/8 though. Again, could be mistaken. It's hard to keep track.
So it's still not quite lethal yet. The question is how.
Oh, the Owl has charge. Sorry, my mistake. Okay, that was a boar with the Owl. So that does mean...
Still only 9 damage.
Yeah, still not enough damage to close out the game. That's definitely a good bit of surprise damage, though.
Unless any of the other zombies happen to have charge, then we don't know about it.
Yeah. I mean, that Raptor Hatchling could as well, I suppose. Oh, another Raptor Hatchling, another Bitter Tide as well. 2 really premium options here. I imagine the Bitter Tide was probably the option that was taken.
Stranglethorn Tiger as well. Yeah, it's going to be an 8 mana, so it wasn't the Stranglethorn Tiger that was picked up. Must he just going to very easily clear up this board now?
Yeah, dealing with everything, even the shore, to make sure there is no way that damage can come through and clear off this board. Still, only 3 minions in play, playing around the MC Tech. This is just perfect Hearthstone here from the USA.
As cube finally drawn, but it just doesn't matter. It's not needed. I don't know what Katsukari can get from this Omega Assembly that's going to save him. There's the Beryllium Nullifier.
Doesn't have Taunt. Security Rover doesn't have Taunt until you rush it in.
Doesn't have Rush, though. That's the problem with no Dr. Boom in play yet.
I'm thinking that might just be it. Unless we see Azalina into tracking into I don't even know. A valiant effort being made here by Singapore, but we can clearly see it wasn't meant to be. And even though Zorkthar was telling us that it's not quite as unfavorable as people think, I think the reading between the lines of what he was saying is it's still Odd Warrior versus Death Rattle Hunter. It's not a matchup that you want to be facing.
He was also saying, we are Norway.
Fair
we
point.
win unfavorable, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Congratulations to Muzzy, though. Does take that down. USA now 2 wins and 1 loss this series, and getting closer and closer to qualifying for BlizzCon. Let's take a look at the matchup we have coming up next. It's going to be Aggro Mage for Crumpled versus Even Warlock for Terrence.
Yeah, this is a matchup that I suppose United States will be very happy they won the previous game.
Yes.
Because the Aggro Mage is a pretty nice matchup against the Even Warlock. This is one of the matchups where Even Warlock feels very different indeed to Control Warlock, because sometimes they can feel a little bit similar. You play Giants, you play Drakes, I suppose those aren't in the Control decks. You play Gul'dan, and you set up Defile and Hellfire Clears. This matchup is very different indeed, because you don't have the Dark Pacts, you don't have some of the Taunt potential with Void Lords and Skull. There's a lot that you are missing in that matchup that makes it a little bit sweeter. But you do still have some strong cards. Hellfire kills off pretty much everything.
Yeah.
Shroom Brewer, Spellstone for healing, Gul'dan is the ultimate finisher. It's not unwinnable whatsoever.
And that's the thing. That is the silver lining, I think, for the Warlock, is that there is still a lot of healing. The 2 Spellstones, the 2 Shroom Brewers, Gul'dan, as you said. They can also get a pretty fast start themselves with Mountain Giants, but the fastest start certainly comes from Mana Worms into Sorcerer's Apprentices, into Stargazer Lunas, into Cosmic Anomalies. The early aggro mage curve can be very aggressive.
Yeah, it strikes fear into the hearts of the bravest of men, even the likes of Terence M, who I imagine will be piloting the aggro mage. I believe that's been his job previously.
It has.
In HGG weeks, he pilots it very well indeed. I think, was it last week that we saw a pretty impressive game from them as well? I seem to...
We've seen a lot of impressive
There's the
games.
thought in my head that I have been impressed by Terence M's aggro mage. Maybe it's because he was playing it while he was actually at a theme park.
That was 2 weeks ago, yeah.
Yeah, which was... Yeah, I guess pretty impressive playing on one phone with the game, and I think his girlfriend's phone to talk on Discord to his other teammates.
Whilst on a roller coaster as well.
I'm sure he was also on a roller coaster. Yeah.
Just completes the image, doesn't it? So yeah, after that though, we have what will be a somewhat complicated match as it involves Even Paladin. Even Warlock versus Even Paladin. I have to admit, I'm not sure how that one would go at all.
Yep. Even Paladin is not an often brought deck in the current meta, vastly outnumbered by odd Paladins, or even as we've been seeing, mech Paladins or OTK
Paladins,
in the global game this week. It's a deck that just completely fell off the radar when the Call to Arms nerf hit. It was the tier 1, the best Paladin deck available for a long time. You and I both played a lot of that deck, I remember. We had a decent amount of success with it on ladder, as did many players in tournaments as well. But when the Call to Arms nerf hit, it just took such a big hit because it couldn't dominate the board quickly enough in the early game. You couldn't thin your deck of the bad cards to draw through the good late game cards like Argent Commander, Lich King. Oh, I remember the good old days, Equality into Avenging Wrath.
Oh, yeah,
Mwah.
Those were the days.
Good stuff. So it is going to be hampered, but it does have the ability to go aggressive in the early game, I find, and value-oriented in the late game.
This has actually reminded me, one of the things I did note when I was looking at Hypno's Even Paladin a while back is that he was only running one copy of Avenging Wrath. That's not the case here. United States do have all of the big bursty finishes they could possibly want. They've got the Avenging Wraths. They have 2 copies of Argent Commander. They've got True Silver Champions. They've got all of the damage that they need. Unfortunately, I have just been informed that one of the players isn't quite ready yet, so we are going to go to a very, very short break before we get into what will be the last 2 games of this series. So don't go anywhere. USA versus Singapore coming up. Welcome back to the Hearthstone Global Games. The players are ready. We are going to jump right into game number 4. Once again, it's going to be Aggro Mage for Singapore versus Even Warlock for USA.
Yeah, this is a matchup that I would personally not like to be on USA's side on the Even Warlock. You are, I think, just going to be struggling a little bit too much to their early boards, to the double counterspell as well that is being... Oh, no, sorry, that's USA with the double counterspell. I think Singapore... the standard list. I was getting a little bit confused because Muzzy is a big proponent of double counterspell, I know. But still, you're going to be struggling to the early boards being put down if you don't clear them up right away or put up taunts through the form of Vulgar Homunculus. You may just be finding yourself in a situation where your paltry amount of healing won't be able to stand up against Glyphs and Cinderstorms and Arcane Missiles, and you're dead.
Singapore is running sort of my version of the standard mage list anyway, or the version that I feel as though I've seen the most, which is with the 1 Mana Addict. And the card is strong. Like, the thing is, you play Mana Worm on turn 1, you play Mana Addict on turn 2. If your opponent can only deal with 1, it's actually quite a tough decision to know which one to deal with.
Yeah, and it's a card that is going to be, I would imagine, fairly good against Even Warlock, because they don't have too many cheap single target removal spells like Frostbolt, Wrath, Jasper Spellstone, anything like that. It's all a little bit overkill. They're going to have to wait until Defile, their Spellstone, Amethyst Spellstone, or Hellfire can clear it up, by which time maybe they've been glyphed and missiled and they've taken just like 8 damage from it.
And Defile's pretty awkward because pretty much everything in the mage deck has 3 or more health. Or rather, 3 health specifically. There's no minion that has 1 health, 2 health, whatever, that's weak to Defile. As we look at these opening hands, and Crumpled is it's okay. He would prefer a Mana Worm to play on turn 1, but with the Cinderstorm, that should just be 5 damage to the face. With the Mana Addict to play on turn 2, I think things are okay. On the other side of things, though, I think we're going to see a lot of this thrown out.
Yeah, I don't know. On both sides, it's not really what you're looking for. I think United States in particular are going to be looking for Vulgar Homunculus. They're going to be looking for Sun Fury, just anything to populate the board in the first couple turns, which is going to be fairly difficult for them to find, as they have... Oh, no, sorry. They have 2 Homunculus, 2 Beetles, and a Sun Fury, and 2 Oozes, actually. So I was looking at Singapore's decks. United States, I think, should be fairly easily able to find a 2-drop, or you know what, maybe 4, I guess.
Yeah, okay, this is about as good a start as the United States could hope for. They've even got Ooze to deal with and a Luneth later on. Plated Beetle as armor, which is obviously great. Okay, we have a game here.
We do indeed. Not necessarily the easiest turn 1 tap or turn 1 coin Homunculus. Both have their merit. If you go coin Homunculus, Homunculus tap 2-drop, that's clearly a strong game plan that you're setting out for yourself. You are running into the potential where you don't have the ability to find removable cards or healing cards before you're just being burst down. I think, personally, I do prefer the tap that they're going for because it means you're still going to be able to populate the board, and health is... the board is unlikely to hit you in the face because you're setting down taunts in the Homunculuses.
Oh, Mana Worm drawn that a little bit too late. If only that was drawn last turn, that could have been played on 1, Mana Addict on 2, and Luna on 3 for the perfect curve. But alas, these Homunculuses are going to cause some issues for Crumpled. Crumpled isn't going to be able to hit the face as easily as he'd like to.
Yeah, Cinderstorm on the following turn is probably not bad. In the absolute best case scenario, you are sinking 4 missiles into the Homunculus, and then you push the rest of the 3 face. It's not ideal because you want Cinderstorm to be having all the missiles going face, ideally, in this matchup.
So is that potentially better if all 5 missiles go face with the Cinderstorm? It's more damage going face by 1.
You want 4 or 1. That's the ideal numbers. If you could choose. You don't want 2 or 3.
But it never seems good, does it? I guess the Mana Addict survives, that's something. But then a second Homunculus comes down. I don't know, Derek. This opening hand for Terrence has worked out very nicely.
It is nuts. I mean, he hit double Homunculus, which is what you're looking for in this matchup. Stops any kind of pressure coming down in the early turns, allows him to play Twilight Drake, which usually is too slow in this matchup because you play it, and then you just have to tank 8 on the following turn or whatever because they've got so much pressure on the board.
What to do? What to do?
Yep, they've got the Beetle that pretty much just counters explosive runes. So Crumble's going to go ahead and play Luna instead, which is interesting. It's somewhat weak to a Defile.
I don't think you're too afraid of that. Defile will be good at pretty much any point in this game.
True.
And if it's just clearing off these minions, it's obviously bad for Singapore, but they've got to take that risk at some point. And it is going to be surviving here. We can clearly see the answer is not available for the United States. So I wonder, therefore, if they go coin Twilight Drake on this turn, because it is both a big threat on the board right now, which is just going to be value trading forever and ever. And you then have strong follow-up. You go Hooked Reaver on the following turn, or double 2-drop. Plenty of plays afterwards as well.
But there is an opening here for Singapore to get a Luna turn. And it's possible, you know, if the next draw is Sorcerer's Apprentice, maybe this goes off. No, okay, it's not going to go off.
Yeah, that is not the card that you are looking to see for Singapore whatsoever.
One of the most expensive cards in the deck, actually.
Pretty much. It's not a bad card to find on turn 4 in this matchup, because if it does stick on the board, it's real good to get that damage rolling.
Yep, it's great after a Hellfire, for example.
Yes. But I imagine we are going to be seeing something else probably on this turn.
With the Twilight Drake sitting on the board.
Nothing else is even good. If you go Mana Worm Cinderstorm?
Yeah, that's the play I'm looking at. It pretty much guarantees that the Homunculus dies.
Yeah.
The problem is then the Twilight Drake gets whichever trade it wants and doesn't really take any damage.
What if you get perfect missiles?
What's perfect missiles, Darren?
They all hit minions. even then you can't keep the Luna alive. I'm just looking at any way that Crumpled can keep that Luna alive.
Okay, perfect missiles now exists. If they all hit minions, then the Mana Addict can make the trade. It's done it!
Oh my god.
Perfect missiles!
I beg your pardon. How could the USA have this kind of luck and still win games of Hearthstone? They missed a straight up 1 out of 5 earlier on with the Shutterwalk. They now just had every missile hit a minion, and Luna has survived. I was joking back when I said perfect missiles, but here we bloomin' are.
Oh, wow. And yeah, Luna cannot be dealt with by United States, which is one of the worst feelings, I think, against Aggro Mage, when there's a Luna or a Sorcerer's Apprentice or a Cosmic Anomaly on the board and you just can't deal with it. It tends to spiral out of control, and this may be the beginning, but it's Sorcerer's Apprentice is the card that Crumpled wants.
Yeah, looking at pinging either of these two minions, I guess the Beetle makes sense because you have definitely with the Arcane Intellect the ability to value trade on the Homunculus.
Any secret wouldn't be too bad here with Spiritual Mage.
That's very true.
Oh,
You called?
All right, there's a secret. So Spiritual Mage can come down, the Explosive Runes gets played, Luna still draws another card.
It's very vulnerable to Defile, though.
Yeah.
Very, very vulnerable to Defile. You have just played a secret, so maybe Terrence is too afraid of Counterspell to go for a Defile unless he has another spell to play first as well.
I think Crumpled still goes for it because then that puts Terrence on having Defile and then also having another 2-mana card to follow up with, or he can't play anything, in which case Crumpled can then go ahead, put Cosmic Anomaly on the board. Okay. Took the half measure there, played the secret without playing the Spiritual Mage. That's something you don't see very often at all.
Really, I think not playing Kirintor Mage is actually a play I've seen quite a few times with this deck.
Interesting.
I'm not saying I necessarily agree with it, because okay, so let's imagine the scenario that Crumpled will have been envisaging, where he plays Kirintor and Terrence has a the Defile. He's on 5 mana, so he can't go Defile 4-drop. If it fails, that's so bad for Terrence. He basically loses the game if he has the Defile and it's counterspelled, or if he doesn't have the Defile at all. I think I liked it a little bit more there for Singapore to just go all in. To just, you know, make a big gambit. You're still drawing another card. They obviously didn't know that a Luneth would be the next card, but if they don't have it, you win the game. If they do have it, it's pretty bad, but you still have an Arcane Intellect, you still draw another card off the top from the Luna. They're still in a good spot. They're still in a very, very good spot, it's worth saying.
Okay, well, Counterspell picked up. Surely now the Kirintor Mage gets played.
I would agree with you there. You are very safe. It would have to be exactly Hellfire and Defile, or Spellstone Defile. Basically any card, any spell and Defile as well, or any spell and Hellfire.
And there was no way of dealing with this board last turn, so chances are there won't be this next turn either. Yeah, Terrence has Mossy Horror. That will finally deal with Stargazer Luna, but that's all the more reason for Crumpled to put down more big minions, to put this Kirintor Mage on the board.
I guess they're also considering playing the Luneth on this turn.
Okay.
I agree with this line of play, however, because you're still drawing a whole bunch of cards, and you want to push your initiative. While you're ahead on board, you want to make yourself more aheaderer on board.
Playing Luneth would bait out the Ooze and potentially limit the amount of things that the United States could do with the Ooze that turn, but there you go. Frostbolt picked up. I mean, he's not actually going to play it. I'm kind of surprised by this.
He's wishing he would have now. With Frostbolt missiles, would have drawn the same amount of cards and delivered an extra 7 damage through to face on this.
Well, now he can play them both with the Cosmic Anomaly next turn, I guess. That's the flip side.
Yes, that is an incredibly powerful play. I agree.
It's alright, isn't it?
Yeah, it's not bad. And now for United States, there is absolute Elemente Nada. You blow up this board, you take the 10, and you die. This is GG.
Well, there you go. Team Singapore looking very happy about that.
Science.
As well they should. I think that was a game that was pretty well played. I personally would have gone for the Kirin Tor Mage a little bit earlier. They obviously would have won either way because there was no Hellfire or Defile. But
there you go. The score is going to be 2-2 as we head all the way to that vital Game 5. The Even Warlock versus the Even Paladin.
yeah, this is kind of a Hearthstone history lesson because Even Paladin fell off the radar just as Even Warlock was kind of coming onto the map, I think, because
fair.
it was around the time of the nerfs, and people were struggling to find new decks after Even Paladin had dropped off completely. Obviously, any kind of control Paladin had also died after the Call to Arms nerf had happened, and people started realizing after, I can't remember who was the first player to post Even Warlock. I think it might have been Zixo, was playing it as like a joke, saying, oh, you can play Mountain Giant on turn 3, lol.
Yeah.
And it turned out to be one of the best decks we have in Hearthstone.
I mean, very briefly when the Witchwood first came out, I think a few players were playing it, but again, not in a serious way. I can remember Trump doing it, I think, being like, oh, look, Handlock's back, everyone. But in reality, if you wanted to play Warlock competitively, you were playing Cube Warlock.
Yes.
But the nerfs came in at the same time. Call to Arms and the Dark Pact and Possessed Lackey all got nerfed together, which created this great opening for Even Warlock. But next up, we're going to see how Even Warlock can cope against Even Paladin. And I'm very excited to see it.
I am as well. I think it's going to be a little bit closer than Odd Paladin up against Even Warlock, which generally is a bit of a miserable matchup for the Odd Paladin. You can get some aggressive starts through the use of Divine Shield minions with the Blessing of Might that we've seen earlier on today. But this is, I think, probably going to be a little bit more palatable for Muzzy on the United States, because he has some cards that are really good in this matchup. The Glass Knight, Corpse Taker, Argent Commander, Avenging Wrath, all this burst damage, all these sticky minions on the board are difficult for the Even Warlock to deal with. And as soon as they don't deal with them, they take a lot of damage.
Yeah, and hey, looking even further back, way back when, to the beginning, the dawn of Hearthstone, if you will, Handlock versus Control Paladin, or Mid-Range Paladin, Equality, Consecration, Pyromancers. These cards are all very strong against Twilight Drakes and against Mountain Giants.
Aldor Peacekeeper, Stampeding Kodo. All these really powerful cards. Guardian of Kings.
Stop naming odd cost cards, Derek. It's Even Paladin.
Fair enough. I'm just naming old Control Paladin cards.
Just getting a bit excited.
That deck was so bad. Don't even at me.
For me, it's all about the Muster for Battle Quartermaster days of Paladin.
Oh yeah, that was my biggest win streak on ladder. I think I won 18 games in a row with mid-range Paladin.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that was a good time. It was very easy to, you know, just draw shielded mini-bot.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was fun.
That deck was the first time I got a good rank, or goodish rank. I got rank 14 Legend.
Yeah, not bad at all.
It's the best thing I'd done until like 2 years after that. But anyways, here we go. Mountain Giant is in Sequinox's opening hand. It will be played on turn 3. Thank you, Zixo, for pointing that out to us.
Allegedly.
We have turned our
Uh-oh.
first
Production team at it again. Going to start this game off with a bang.
Let's get some old champs in chat for the Volcano, as this is a respectable hand for United States to be rolling with here, but not premium. I'm kind of unsure what a premium hand is now in Even Paladin, because beforehand you just counted up how many Call to Arms they had in hand and rated them on a score from 0 to 2. Obviously that's not true. There were like the better cards in that matchup were actually Blessing of Kings, if you remember, against the control-ish Warlocks, because you just hit them in the face as quickly as possible.
It played around Defiles and Hellfires
right.
very nicely.
The Blessing of Kings, I would have to imagine, still in the deck. Yeah, double Blessing of Kings, Chillblade Champion in there as well for a little bit of charge damage.
Yep, we saw that in Hypno's Even Paladin deck as well, and yeah, it did some serious work. There's no Kangor in this version of the list. There we go. Which was, yeah.
Oh, I thought you meant Kangor's Endless Army.
No. Like, Kangor, Crystal Smith Kangor himself.
Obviously you dolt. There's no Kangor's Endless Army.
The 7-cost legendary spell.
Yeah.
Go that well with Gen Greymane. But yeah, and I guess you could argue that's a little bit experimental to be playing that card, and I guess that's what's been cut for the second Avenging Wrath.
I know that when I was watching Rage streaming on, I think it was Zalay's channel the other day, he was raving about Crystal Smith Kangor. He thinks that card is really good, and he works at Blizzard, so you know he's legit.
Well, I mean, stick a single Blessing of Kings on it, and suddenly it's healing for 10 every time it takes damage. That's not bad.
Disgusting. Auto Defense Matrix, the newest secret added to Paladin. Not one that I have seen played pretty much ever, because obviously the power of Hydrologist has fallen off in the meta, because Control Paladin isn't really a thing, Murloc Paladin is obviously not really a thing, and even then, Hydrologist was one of the worst Murlocs in Murloc Paladin.
I have to admit, I'm sort of surprised it wasn't picked here. I mean, okay, obviously if they're going to play the secret immediately, the Auto Defense Matrix doesn't do all that much, but against a deck that plays cards like Mountain Giant, and in a deck where you play cards like the Lich King, I have seen Auto Defense Matrix do a lot of work in these scenarios.
I would be very unsurprised if the discussion between Sequinox and his teammates is, what is that new secret again? What does it do? How do you activate it? Because I'm pretty sure none of these pro players will have seen it played very much at all.
Quick, someone, Google.
So many possibilities.
So just debating whether it's worth going for the Mountain Giant here for Singapore. Obviously, I suppose the main discussion they're having around this secret is it Repentance? Are we allowed to throw down this Mountain Giant lest we have it turned into an 8-1? And that is such a big tempo loss, my goodness.
It would be a disaster if they played into a Repentance, and if it were a Repentance, they're allowing one of these 1-1s to just straight tread into it. So, Sequinox going to play Vulgar Homunculus instead, rewarding Muzzy for playing the secret immediately. That's what he'll have been thinking when he picked the secret, decided to play it immediately. He's thinking, yep, it's Giant turn, let's just stop them from playing the Giant. And now, I actually like that a lot.
Weird turn here for Muzzy in that we could just see more development with Berserker hero power. And then, if he could trade everything in to play around Defile and Hellfire somewhat. It's really not a good play, but if you are met with a Hellfire or a Defile, you're so far behind then because you can't even go for one of your power 6 drops yet for a turn. Singapore saying here, fool me once, shame on you.
However, the Noble Sacrifice will prevent this Mountain Giant from hitting the face for a turn, which, again, has slowed down Singapore significantly.
Do you think you'd go for the Equality here? It's a close one. You do have Equality Consecrate next turn, but you really want to get playing one of your Argent Commanders next turn.
Yeah.
You don't want to be spending your 6-mana slot playing Consecration.
I agree. I think at first the Equality looks really bad, but when you factor in the fact that it's going to be difficult to play it anytime soon, maybe you consider it. Muzzy decides not to.
Because if you're met here with Mountain Giant into Sun Fury, and then you have Equality Consecrate,
that's
you are
insane.
absolutely over the moon. Or even just any decent-sized minion here. If he plays Twilight Drake, another Giant, coin into Dread Infernal, like we see here, all of these cards are good to save the Equality Consecrate for. And as I reel off the outcomes where it's good to save back the Equality here, I guess I'm understanding more and more Muzzy's decision to hold it back here. Because also, in addition to all those reasons, it's kind of a mind gamesy play where Singapore will be thinking, if he had Equality, surely he would have played it there, taken a nice value trade, or trading up, sorry, with the 1-1, and then taking care of my Mountain Giant.
Sequinox has to decide what he's going to do for the rest of this turn. Does he play into the Equality or doesn't he? And yeah, he sort of is. It's not the worst play into the Equality, at least it does a job.
Ooh.
But, ooh.
That is a pickup that I'm very happy we see from Muzzy, because this introduces a whole nother layer into these calculations.
Maybe everything can just go face now, the Argent Commander and the 5-2.
If you'll remember, one of the strongest combinations in even Paladin before the nerf hit was Equality Avenging Wrath.
Yep.
And I think we are going to see here Muzzy going for that play. I absolutely love this. He's just setting up for Equality, Avenging Wrath, demanding the board be cleared here, or he just destroys everything and kills his opponent.
He can't do it next turn, though. Next turn will be one turn too early mana-wise. So what is vital is that he survives until turn 8, where he can then do the combo and win the game. However, as you said, this has demanded that the board be cleared. So Equinox isn't going to be able to just push 14 damage just like that.
And how does that get done? We could see trade into the Divine Shield with the Dread Infernal and then Shadow Flame. Also developing a Sun Fury as well.
Yep.
Doesn't seem bad.
While pushing 8 damage to the face.
Yep, not bad at all. We could just see...
How defensively do they want to play it? Because they could just Spellstone away the 5/2, heal up to 15, and double trade the Argent.
Yeah, you want to be clearing. You don't want to be taunting, I think is the main distinction here. Like, putting taunts in the way is just really vulnerable to Equality, and you don't want to be taking that risk.
Shield up.
Yeah, oh, okay, sorry, yeah. This is a better way of going about it with the same effect, yeah.
And now Muzzy still cannot play the Equality Avenging Wrath just yet. One turn too soon, and it wouldn't have been lethal anyway. He could just go Consecration, which really sets up for it, but it's also very obvious. It telegraphs that he's going to be playing.
So if Equality Consecration were to be seen, probably without even a hero power, because you're afraid of Spellstone coming down to hit it.
Right.
It brings your opponent down to 6. Avenging Wrath is then potentially lethal.
Oh, it's so unlikely though. As soon as Equinox plays minion.
It's very unlikely, but then you could go Argent Commander through to face unless they play a taunt. It's definitely worth considering.
Let me think.
To Northrend!
I guess the thinking then, if you actually take that through to the next turn, like you said, is if you do go for that, you clear off the board this turn and then set up for an Avenging Wrath. Any minion they put in play just puts a big stop to that right away.
Oh, it's so close, but with that Spellstone, as we can see, it's also quite far. Bone Mare picked up as well. I mean, the turns are going to get out of control for Equinox soon. He's got the Lich King, he's got Bone Mare, he's got Hooked Reavers with Mountain Giants, he's got Gul'dan on turn 10.
Muzzy's got good stuff as well, though. He's got his own Lich King. He's got Equality Avenging Wrath, Corpse Taker Consecration. Play after play on both sides here. And because Muzzy has such a health lead over his opponent, that's just a huge advantage.
So many possibilities.
All right, Defile Hooked Reaver is a very powerful play onto the board. It's getting tight now, though. Equality Avenging Wrath is a guaranteed 6 damage to the face.
It is.
Followed up with Consecration.
Against which there is currently no response.
There isn't.
Unless a minion that costs 4 or less is drawn on the following turn.
Yeah.
Spellstone can kill it off.
This is the other way of doing things. It's Consecration first, and then Equality Avenging Wrath next turn. But I don't think it guarantees lethal by any means over 2 turns.
Well, it means that the Corpse Taker has to be dealt with first.
Yeah. But one trade and one Spellstone will now completely ruin Muzzy's plans. But as he won't have used the Equality or Avenging Wrath yet, the plan is still there, ready to go for later on, I guess.
We can clearly see here, Singapore would pretty much have been locked out of the game unless they tapped into a 2-drop and then Spellstoned their own 2-drop if Muzzy had gone for the Equality Avenging Wrath play.
But it's very easy for us to look at that. And
it was, real unlikely to work out. Wow, even seeing the double Spellstone play. The first one...
Zero healing.
Yeah, I believe won't heal.
No.
But just getting the 7 damage through to face is much more important if the Equinox setting up lethal quite handily.
Yep, so now Muzzy does actually have to deal with this Hooked Reaver, which means he will be playing the Equality and the Avenging Wrath. Or will he be playing the Lich King? No, that's too risky.
I don't mind going Lich King there because you do have to start making risky plays here now that you're fairly far behind for the United States. But we are clearly seeing here they've got more
okay.
through.
All right. We're talking about how bad some of the USA's luck has been. That would have been too much.
That would have been a step too far. I'm not even considering the possibility that they miss 8 50-50s in a row.
But now the Lich King from Sequinox's side doesn't have an answer from Muzzy and might actually just be locking down the game for Sequinox.
So what can we see? Lich King on this turn, straight up for Singapore is probably their best bet.
Yeah.
It's a taunt in the way, no immediate answer for the old US of A.
Second Avenging Wrath and 6-go face is like one of the few ways I could think that Muzzy wins now. I guess, yeah, they just have to play their own Lich King in response.
Yep, it's looking that way, and then it's going to be Gul'dan for Singapore quite happily as well, I add.
Warriors of the frozen wastes.
Reporting for duty.
Oof.
That's no good with only 6 health.
Yeah, you're probably just
And
going to be dying then.
Sequinox has his own Obliterate, so this is just going to be lethal.
He would die.
Oh, he would die. He would
Would
die. My apologies.
Bone Mare doesn't do it. Gul'dan.
Oh, this is weird.
This is really weird, man.
I mean, Bone Mare is looking like... Okay, Bone Mare or Mountain Giant Sunfury Protector are the two potential plays. I think I prefer Bone Mare because that actually allows him to deal with the Lich King.
I mean, even Gul'dan is worth considering, right? You go up to 11.
Oh, yeah.
Do you set up a Volga Homunculus as well?
He...
I can't quite remember.
Yeah. Oh, wait, no, I might be thinking of the last game, actually.
Yeah,
I'm
he
not
went
sure.
Giant. I don't think there have been Homunculuses played.
Singapore just hovered over the Defile.
Oh, no, there was one. Sorry, I apologize. Right at the start, there was a Homunculus.
Is there a potential Defile play here? He's just hovering over it.
Yeah, looking like we are going to see
All right.
the Sun Fury play on this turn, damaging his own Giant just to be able to play it on this turn to taunt it up. And now, for Muzzy, is there any way that he can find the lethal on this turn? Corpse Taker is not that, but it is a lifesteal.
It's actually incredible. If buffed up by Blessing of Kings, again, Sequinox cannot play Obliterate onto the
man.
card. It would just soak up 2 attacks, therefore healing the United States back up to 20.
Does Muzzy see the lines? Does he go for Corpse Taker Blessing on this turn to play around the Obliterate lethal?
Well, it plays around a lot of things, right? Like, Death Coil wouldn't be lethal. Frostmourne wouldn't be lethal. Death and Decay wouldn't be lethal.
Yeah, fair. He has to do
I just
it.
think it's the only play here, really.
Unless Muzzy wants to be knocked down with the rest of the USA
There we go.
into the lower bracket here. He makes the play. I believe now he is not dead on board.
No.
Obliterate cannot be played. Shroom Brewer off the top would allow Singapore to have enough health to close out the game. Blood Reaver Gul'dan, you don't have enough mana.
Sequinox got his hands on his face now. Twilight Drake not going to be the card.
This
that
is
does
so
it.
close.
So again, Sequinox can develop the Gul'dan now, and he can trade away the Corpse Taker. He'd be putting himself to 9, but he'd be putting the USA back up to 20.
Oh my god.
Although, Muzzy's sort of run out of stuff now. Doesn't really matter how much health he has. I don't think he can beat a Gul'dan.
He kind of has, but if he finds Valanir,
Yeah.
if he finds what else is in his deck list, as I take a look, has fallen off the table, behind the scenes look. We're talking about Argent Commander, both of which have been played, Avenging Wrath, Tarim, Valanir. There's not
Tarim's
much
good.
at the top end of this deck.
Lich King's been played.
And there it is, the Gul'dan ready to come down. Obliterate into True Silver Champion is very close to lethal. Uther cannot dual wield. This
Okay.
is 2 damage off lethal.
Okay, well that would set up lethal the following turn almost. Not quite, because the hero power would then
Heal
put
up
Singapore
to
back up to 5 for
5?
the second True Silver.
Oh
would
my
be
god,
lethal.
this game's so close.
But then an Avenging Wrath would probably be lethal after that.
I mean, Avenging Wrath is probably lethal already, I think. Oh no, there wouldn't be the mana, would there?
No.
Mm.
No, so Obliterate now, True Silver goes face, that puts Sequinox down to 2, he heals up to 5, then the second True Silver swing plus anything would be lethal. That is the way that Muzzy wins the game. He's seen it, he's going for it.
I believe the kids would say, boy, he bout to do it. As he sends all of his throw to face. Smork is the name of the game here. United States trying to find something off the top to close out this game.
Cannot believe how close this series has been as the final potential draw. Okay, it's the Black Knight. I mean, there's still a lot Singapore can do here. Bone Mare.
Hero Power Bone Mare is the play I'm looking at. Ship everything else to face.
And then Muzzy would need Tarim.
There's no silence in the deck, yet Tarim would be needed. So maybe if you're afraid of Tarim, you have to take a value trade, then push everything face.
But that's fine.
Doesn't feel good.
Sequinox has time.
Well, he wants to set up 2-turn lethal. He doesn't want to allow for Avenging Wrath with an equality over the next.
Oh, yeah, that's true. That's true. He doesn't know what that leftmost card is. The Gengrey Man has been there for a while. I guess it could be an equality.
Yeah, with no lethal available, I struggle to see many plays other than Bone Mare on this turn.
But they find another play, and suddenly Avenging Wrath is once again looking like it would be lethal. Blessing of Kings is not quite going to do it!
So close for Muzzy, but I think that might finally be 1 damage off lethal. USA knocked down to the losers bracket.
Just look at Sequinox. Team Singapore getting up, having a dance, having a hug, waving the flag. That's what we like to see.
I believe that's actually their,
I was going to say, that's not the country flag, that's the team flag. Oops, we brought the wrong one with us today, but who cares? Wow, that was a series and a half. Seemed like a bit of a risky play, that last play there, with the Skulking Geist rather than the Bone Mare, which, as we were saying, suddenly any charger, and there are a few of them in United States deck. Chillblade Champion, for example. A Consecration would have been lethal. Avenging Wrath would have been lethal.
There were outs with the other play as well. If they'd left up the weapon, we could have seen Equality, because they don't know that an Equality isn't in hand. They don't know that a Consecration isn't in hand. They could probably make the read, but if it was Equality Consecration, the weapon through to face would have closed things out. There was so much to think about there, but after a very, very hard-fought series, Singapore have done it. They are 1 series away from BlizzCon after they will be facing up against, I believe, New Zealand later on in the Global Games.
Let's take a look one more time at the games that just went down. And it was a close one. This was a tight series, back and forth all the way until at the end there, Singapore were able to take the last 2 games in a row.
And we were feeling at the start, you know, we were both trying to figure out who we thought was ahead in here. I was saying ever so slightly Singapore in terms of matchups.
You did say that, yeah.
But United States, I felt probably I thought were stronger players, so maybe might be able to pull it back. But Singapore, man, I think they were playing some pretty tight Hearthstone throughout.
United States almost 3-0'd Singapore, actually, if we think back to the Shutterwalk Shaman game,
true.
where they lost the 1 in 5 that would have saved them and set up for the Shutterwalk lethal next turn. That's how close this series was, guys. Right the way from back there when United States almost just won, and then that final game was very tight as well.
And this is where a little cast a trick. We divert you from the fact that USA would have won if they'd won a 1 out of 5 and put you back over to the point in the game where Sequinox and the rest of Singapore played pretty well, we think.
They were incredible. But let's find out what Sequinox thought of the team's play. Sequinox, Katsukari team, congratulations! You are now 1 game away from going to... Can you hear me? Can you hear me? They can't hear me. I can tell. You can tell they can't hear you when they're like talking over you. Very rude otherwise.
Yeah, I like seeing them there. They're hanging out, eating a burger, just cracking open a hot one with the boys.
Yeah, we don't want to interview them. We just want to watch them eat.
Did you see that new Twitter page which has been made of Hearthstone players eating things? That is a spicy meme of a page if ever I've seen one.
When I last checked, it only had 2 followers, one of which was Lorinda.
Right.
Anyways, way back when, in game 1 of this series, it was the Druid versus the Hunter, and the Druid did manage to get there with a quite an explosive Savage Raw turn.
Yeah, this was a while ago now, wasn't it?
It was. I had to stretch my memory and try and work out what happened.
Yeah, setting up for the lethal with the swipe. It was the play we were looking at. Definitely felt like the way to go. Singapore had a 1 out of 2 and then a 1 out of 3 to be able to win through King Crush. off of the Katharina, if I remember
That's
correctly.
Right, that's right.
Thankfully, though, for the United States, they got one little bit of luck in that game and didn't lose.
I mean, it's all swings and roundabouts. It goes around and it comes around for every team in the Hearthstone Global Games. But unfortunately for Frozen, this game was not destined to go his way. As you can see, it went Grumble, Zola, Sour Knight, Sour Knight, Sour Knight, Sour Knight.
Yeah, it brings a tear to my eye.
One more, just if any of these were bounced to the hand, which again, it was a 4 in 5 chance, it would have been played again, there would have been 3 more health, this wouldn't have been lethal, and Shadowwalk on the other side would have been lethal next turn. But hey, that's what happens when you play Shadowwalk Shaman sometimes.
Frozen is just cold-blooded, though, like giving us nothing with his facial expression. If that had been me, my computer would have been destroyed several times over. I would have sent the pieces to Blizzard and said, you did this. This is your fault.
Somehow found Ben Brode's living address, sent it to him.
I would not have done that. I deliberately left it nondescript and less criminal.
Then there was the Aggro Mage, just getting through the Even Warlock fairly easily. There was no Hellfire drawn by Terrence, no easy way of clearing this board. And there was just no way of stopping the Luna.
Yep, that is what we were talking about that can happen in this matchup with the Mage. You just have too much stuff on the board, and if there isn't the early clear through Defile, a Hellfire, you die. And here, this series, this final game, which was so close. Muzzy was 1 damage off lethal at multiple points throughout the game. We can see that he did have the ability to set up a 2-turn lethal. I'm not saying he made the wrong play because it was incredibly unlikely to happen, but it's just worth pointing out, if they'd been, I don't know, maybe if they could have felt it, I'm not even saying they played wrong or they should have gone for it, but it could have happened. They could have won.
The fact remains that if they did set up that 2-turn lethal, they would have won the game the following turn, and the USA would have won the series.
Probably. Singapore could still then have tapped into a 2-drop and then Spellstone their own 2-drop, but likely they set up the lethal.
Anyways, I believe we are now ready, one more time, to interview Secronix. Team Singapore, congratulations. You are now 1 game away from qualifying to the Hearthstone Global Games finals at BlizzCon. How does that feel?
Feels good, man.
Thumbs up. It's been a great achievement for you guys. This whole tournament so far, you guys have been on top of your game. That was a close series, though.
Yes, really close. Like we had so much discipline during the last game. You know, yeah, we really wanted to tap for the lethal out, but we just decided that cooldown gets us there. So, and then if we tap, we have won on the spot, but that's in hindsight. But yeah, I think like we were just so like they had pretty much they had quite a number of outs also for lethal, and yeah, that was really intense. I believe everyone saw the way we celebrated after we won, after USA conceded. So, whew.
Were you surprised when you saw even Paladin in the USA's lineup?
To be honest, yes. Yeah. I guess it kind of worked out for them because they did manage to get it into our Warlock, which is apparently slightly favored for the Paladin. But yeah, I think you know we have to give credit to them for trying to bring it almost paid off. It almost paid off, but I guess we got slightly lucky in the end. Yeah.
I guess you could say that. And I have to ask you, going up next, I believe against New Zealand are your next opponents after they won their first series here in the Global Games. Are you afraid to go up against them? Do you think they'll be easier than USA, harder? What are you anticipating from them?
I think we just have to play our own game. Yeah, I think so far we've been performing very well. Like, I don't think we really care about who we play against. Yeah, I think it's more of us just perfecting our own plays to make sure that we don't make any mistakes, and I think we'll be able to take anyone down. Yeah.
Do you know what, guys? Last question, because we've really enjoyed watching the 3 of you playing together in the same space. Do you think that makes it more fun, competing in the Hearthstone Global Games together?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's just way more fun that everyone is together. You know, we can discuss face to face and things like that. It's a pity that Kaios couldn't join us because it's 2 a.m. over here now, and he has school the next day. So yeah, so it's kind of. But I believe he can feel our energy even through Discord. Yeah. Well, but overall, it's just really fun to play together.
Congratulations.
You know, and these guys are my close friends in real life too.
That is great to hear. Congratulations, guys. Go get some sleep, and hopefully you will all be able to play together in a couple months' time at BlizzCon. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Thanks, guys. See you.
That's always great to chat with Sigmonox.
Yeah, he's a very lovely young gentleman.
He is, indeed. But that is us finished for today. Let's take a look one more time at the bracket for this group and confirm what we've been saying before. The winners match is going to be New Zealand versus Singapore, and then the losers match, United States versus Chinese Taipei. Loser of that match is going to be eliminated from the Hearthstone Global Games. Wow.
And don't I feel a fool? When I was quizzed by you at the start of the day, I was saying I think Chinese Taipei and United States will be the two teams advancing through, which is now impossible. It will only be one of them at best advancing through to BlizzCon, potentially neither of them, as they will have to be fighting their way through to the losers bracket, whereas one team out of Singapore and New Zealand is guaranteed a spot in BlizzCon.
I imagine you in particular will be pretty invested in that game between Chinese Taipei and USA, as I know you love both of those teams.
I do.
Yeah. Anyways, let's take a look at which games are coming up tomorrow. Now that we have a little bit more clarity, now that we've seen some of these games being played, China versus Switzerland up first, followed by Hong Kong versus Netherlands. That is an elimination game, not one you're going to want to miss. Then Brazil versus Portugal are going to be playing for the first time, Chile and Spain, and finally Bulgaria versus the United Kingdom. Winner of that series will be qualifying to BlizzCon.
Yeah, getting our first look at Group A in Brazil, Portugal, Chile, and Spain. Very excited to get into that group because I think that is a very maybe not underrepresented, but unassuming team. People won't be giving them enough credit, I think, because Brazil, obviously the only undefeated team so far in the global games, are in a great spot. And I'm liking a lot of what I see from Spain in particular. Their communication, their play has been absolutely on point throughout.
Now, before we go, we want to see it. We know you want to see it. It's time for a cheer update for HGG Cheer, which once again, these are your personal rewards. If you have cheered 2,500 bits, then you have unlocked everything up to and including the special card pack. There have been almost 9 million total cheers so far, which means we've achieved the first community reward, which is 2 more card packs for everyone that's spent at least 700 bits on cheers. So that's very exciting as we move forward into the leaderboards and see, okay, we have a clear winner.
Yeah, United States still in the lead, which means even though they may have just lost their series, I'm sure all of the USA players at the Global Games will be fairly happy because once again, all the teams, if you cheer for a certain country, the players on that team will receive a portion of the revenue from the cheer.
Yeah, it's actually a really exciting new system. It's great. We're all winners. We get discounted packs and emotes and card backs and all of that stuff. If you haven't done so yet, you can buy bits above us at the Get Bits button, and you can spend them underneath by clicking the bit thing and then choosing your country and choosing the amount of bits you'd like to spend. But that is us finished for day 1 of week 7 of the Hearthstone Global Games. We will be back, Lorinda, Gaskin, Derek, and myself, tomorrow for the next 5 games. You're not going to want to miss these. We're going to start eliminating teams one more time. The Hearthstone Global Games continue tomorrow.